2026 to order. This meeting is being held in person and by electronic means. Council members and the public may participate by either method. Any council members joining electronically are reminded to enable video to confirm quorum. The meeting is being live streamed on the city's website and YouTube. Meeting progress will be updated on X and Threads at Van City Clerk. Though due to new posting limits, updates will only cover essential items such as vote results. Speakers are encouraged to monitor the live stream to track meeting progress, but please note it is slightly delayed. Call in or arrive soon after receiving your reminder email so you're ready when your name is called. In the case of an emergency requiring evacuation, there are 2 exits located beyond the glass doors and to the left. If the glass doors are blocked, please use one of the 4 additional exits within the chamber. Do not use the elevator. Use the stairs instead. If you need mobility assistance, remain where you are and security staff will guide you to a safe location. A defibrillator is available at the end of the hallway outside the chamber. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We thank them for having cared for this land and look forward to working with them in partnership as we continue to build this great city together. I'll also recognize the immense contributions of the City of Vancouver's team members who work hard every day to help make our city an incredible place to live, work, and play. Clerk, may we please have roll call?
Thank you. Acting Mayor Klassen in the chair. Mayor Sim, leave of absence for personal reasons all day. Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Dominato. Councillor Bly. Councillor Fry. Councillor Montague.
Present.
Councillor Klassen.
Present.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Councillor Meisner.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Joe. Councillor Orr. And Councillor Maloney. Thank you, Acting Mayor Klassen. You have quorum.
Okay, thanks very much. Before we begin, we have a few announcements. The public may speak in person or by phone, or may submit written comments to Mayor and Council. Speakers may only speak once and will have up to 5 minutes to comment on the merits of the application. Please state whether you are in support or oppose the application and if you are a Vancouver resident. Those representing 4 or more individuals or groups, including themselves, may speak for up to 8 minutes. Each person being represented must confirm their name and presence in person or by phone and may not speak separately. Written comments can be submitted through Mayor and Council public hearing feedback on the city's website. If you pre-registered with a presentation, say next to have the clerk advance your slides. The procedure bylaw prohibits council members from the use of words, tone, or gestures that express negative views of individuals or groups. Members of the public are expected to follow the directions of the chair and not engage in improper conduct, such as hateful, defamatory, or discriminatory language. Council members may raise a point of order if language is not respectful, and I may ask the speakers to adjust their remarks accordingly. A reminder, at public hearings, council acts as a quasi-judicial body and must focus solely on the merits of the rezoning or heritage application. Members may ask clarifying questions of staff or speakers, including the applicant, but should reserve debate until after the speakers list is closed. After hearing from speakers, council may 1. Approve the application in principle, 2. Approve the application in principle with amendments, 3. Refuse the application, or 4. Refer the application to staff for further consideration. Finally, if all speakers are not heard today, the public hearing will recess and reconvene on Wednesday, July 22nd at 9:30 a.m. So the item we have before us is the Villages Planning Program, Villages Plan, City Initiative Rezoning, and Vancouver Official Development Plan Amendments. On July 14, 2026, Council heard the staff presentations and asked questions to staff and began hearing from speakers. Today, Council will continue to hear the remaining speakers, starting with Speaker 26. Speakers will have up to 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. Registered Speaker 26 is Lisa Phillips. And before we continue, Clerk, that was a nice shock. Okay, just noting that I think we dealt with the LOAs in your remarks earlier, correct?
Yes.
I have Mayor Sim and Councillor Bly.
I didn't announce Councillor Bly has leave of absence for personal reasons from 4 to 5.
Okay, very good. Thanks very much. Okay, with that, Speaker 26, and I just want to make sure I have my, it's right here. Stop on me. There we go. On the phone is Lisa Phillips. Lisa, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, great. I know you have a presentation, so just say next, but you can begin speaking now.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Phillips, a third-generation Vancouverite, and I'm speaking today in support of the Villages Plan, provided Council is open to making some modifications based on what we've heard from residents. I'd love to see Vancouver become a more vibrant, thriving city with busy shops and restaurants and more housing choices, and I understand that achieving those goals requires density. However, last week residents raised some important questions. They asked about the need for more housing when there is talk about governments purchasing over supply. They asked about the need for more villages when we already have organic ones that are struggling. And they asked about the need for more retail when nearby shopping areas are already having difficulty filling vacancies. These concerns deserve careful consideration and are a call for Council to review some of the proposed village locations and to ensure the rezoning will truly deliver the missing middle, such as duplexes and laneway homes. When I first heard about the proposed village at 16th and McDonald, my first question was, where will everyone park? These streets are already jammed. If the argument is that the average number of cars per household will decline in walkable villages, that may well be true, but even with fewer cars per household, a significant increase in households can still mean more vehicles overall. I've always enjoyed working with numbers, so let's look at what the data tells us. Next slide, please. In 2024, the city eliminated minimum residential parking requirements citywide under the assumption that walkable communities will greatly reduce the need for cars. The reality is more nuanced. Even in dense, transit-rich cities like New York, Paris, and London, people still own cars. The average is about 0.7 vehicles per household. Vancouver as a whole sits at around 1.04, but the Broadway corridor, which was much more similar to what the Villages Plan is trying to create, is at 0.85. So in this analysis, I'm using the Broadway number to assume the benefit of improved walkability without pretending we have Paris's or New York's transit system. Next slide, please. Let's bring this down to a real example, the 16th and McDonald Village. I couldn't find any public household build-out forecasts for the villages, so the numbers I'm showing here are based on typical redevelopment patterns in Vancouver and are for illustrative purposes only. Today, this village has about 2,100 households and approximately 2,200 vehicles. As the plan builds out, it's reasonable to expect 3,600 to 4,700 households. Even using the lower Broadway corridor vehicle ownership rate from the previous slide, that still translates to about 1,000 to 2,000 additional cars in this one small neighborhood. Next slide, please. Here's what 15th and McDonald looks like today at single-family density. Cars are already parked bumper to bumper, every spot taken. Now imagine adding 1,000 or more additional cars to these same streets. Where will they go? Next slide, please. Density aside, Stats Canada data shows that vehicle ownership keeps growing. It was at 4.2% last year. A growing share of these new vehicles are EVs, and EVs have unique needs. According to the International Energy Agency, 75% of charging happens at home, that's done overnight at non-peak hours. So we actually need more on-site infrastructure, not less. Next slide, please. Other cities have learned this lesson the hard way. They dropped their parking mandates years ago and are now experiencing a parking crisis. In some parts of London, for example, people are paying £100,000 to £750,000 for a single private parking space. Please note the typo on the slide says per year. It's a purchase. Vancouver is working towards future-proofing with its strict EV mandate that all new parking be EV-ready. But there's a catch. This requirement only applies to the parking stalls that are actually being built. If no parking is built, then there are no EV requirements. So are we truly EV ready, or are we repeating mistakes that other cities are now paying dearly to fix? Next slide, please. I support the goals of the village's plan, provided we address residents' concerns and plan the supporting infrastructure before construction begins. There has been mention about using permit parking and meters as solutions, but those won't work when vehicle numbers are increasing and our streets are already packed. So I have 3 additional requests for council. First, to complete a full local parking demand analysis for each of the proposed villages. If this work has already been done, I ask that the vehicle ownership ratios used in the analysis be revisited to confirm they are realistic. 2, to ensure adequate parking for residential and retail use before finalizing implementation. And 3, to stay committed to EV readiness. Planning for these needs up front will help avoid costly retrofits later and ensure the villages become the vibrant, livable neighborhoods we all want.
Thanks.
Next slide, please.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone, for your time
Thanks,
and
Lisa.
for considering these concerns.
Very good. A nice way to end that speaking. Thanks very much. Okay. Our next speaker on the phone is Julian Mays.
Hello, can you hear me?
You bet. Julian, go right ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, my name is Julian Mays. I'm a resident of Vancouver, and I too have kids and friends that I want to stay in Vancouver. But nevertheless, I'm against this proposal for many of the same reasons that earlier speakers brought up last week and just recently. First of all, this is not good density. Second of all, we already have city centers that are struggling. Third, the proposals massively penalize current residents in the village areas for some abstract hopes of future affordability, even though 30 years of increased market density in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland has not produced that outcome. We need a better approach. And finally, the fourth reason is the process for seeking public input and generating city reports feels incomplete and biased. So I first of all want to go back to the density comment that I made, and I apologize, I'm not at home, so I've lost some of my notes here. But so I'll just go back to some other ones. So first of all, good density fits. I don't think anyone's opposed to some increased density, but we want it to fit in with the neighborhood. So dwell on Larch at 37th is the kind of direction that I can support. More homes, modest height, careful design, and a form that still respects the street. That was, I believe, a single family lot, and it was converted to 5 units. So I'd like to see more of that. I think there's already approval for that in Vancouver, so why can't the Villages area keep with that? Similarly, the West 4th and Vine Safeway redevelopment is another example where I think people can understand the significant density improvements and support it. It's an established major commercial site. It has lots of new units. It helps the neighborhood. It fits in. But dropping oversized buildings onto residential streets is different. The 3rd and Vine Tower proposal is exactly the kind of scale change that makes residents cringe. And a lot of people are really opposed to this proposal that you can stick a 6-story building next to a single-family house in these village areas. It may produce rental units, but it also imposes height, shadow, view loss, tree loss, and neighborhood disruption on people who already live there. I don't think that's fair. There's got to be a better way that works for everybody. I'm also frustrated by the arrogance of this process in some ways. Some of the city reports show these fantastic views where all the people in the foreground look happy and it looks like a great architectural view. And in the background, miles away, is this 6-story building. But really, as we saw last week, what people are really going to see is that kind of image that was posted by the earlier speaker who had a 5-story building. Right? It just doesn't fit. So I'm hoping we can avoid that. I'm also annoyed by some of the surveys. Producing a report that says general support with some concerns. I'm not sure if that gets us that much further ahead. I don't think there's been fantastic public input to take on this kind of scale change. So I'm hoping that we could perhaps slow down and aim for some of that better density that I talked about earlier. I don't think we want to sacrifice Vancouver's livability for a plan that may still fail to make housing affordable. So I'm asking City Council to please slow down, make considerable changes to the village plan, and listen properly and give us smarter density. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Okay, our next speaker is Patrick Yu. Hi, Patrick. Go right ahead.
Vancouver resident, and I'm opposed to the village's planning program. I spent my career in medicine, which taught me one rule above all. Before you treat, you must get the diagnosis right. Prescribe a treatment for the wrong disease, and you do not help the patient, you harm them. The intent behind the village's plan was reasonable, given the circumstances the mayor faced in the middle of a housing crisis under real pressure to act. He calls it bold, a way to build housing so people can afford to live here and raise their families here. I don't doubt that intent, but good intentions do not guarantee the right solution. In medicine, some of the gravest harms come from well-meaning treatments aimed at the wrong problem. This plan rests on a single diagnosis that Vancouver suffers from a shortage of permission, and that if we rezone enough land, the homes will follow. That diagnosis is wrong. The city's own December report on development viability reached a simple conclusion. The barrier to new housing is not zoning, it's economics. Vancouver already has some 84,000 homes in the pipeline, 15 years worth, including 43,000 that are approved or in the queue and still not built. The problem is not a lack of permission. Construction costs have risen far faster than revenues, and many projects simply no longer pencil or can secure financing. Even for the form that comes closest to penciling, the 6-story rental, the city is already waiving fees, relaxing its affordability rules, and opening it citywide to coax it forward. If more zoning were the answer, that housing would already be rising. The missing ingredient is money, and rezoning 14,000 more lots adds none of it. So look at the treatment, a permanent citywide rezoning on the theory that more permission means more housing. Where is the evidence that it works? There is none. Councillor Meisner put it plainly, with no requirements in the plan, we are just hoping that more supply will make things more affordable. Staff did not disagree. We're hoping additional supply, they said. Hoping is not evidence. It's a wish. The plan promotes a greater diversity of housing, but with no design or neighborhood guidelines, economics alone will drive what gets built. Not the gentle townhouses on the brochure, but the single most disruptive building form, the 6-story apartment, because that is the one that pays. It does not broaden the mix of housing, it narrows it, block by block across our residential neighborhoods, eroding the character of these places and everyone's quality of life. And some of the harm is immediate and certain. The day this plan passes, on roughly 600 lots in the proposed new retail cores, owners are frozen, barred from rebuilding what they own and pushed to sell into a land assembly. Some owning newer homes may lose equity outright with no right to any compensation. The city's own legal requirement described it as a little bit unusual. If I were one of these homeowners, I would have different and stronger words not fit for this chamber. If I had mistaken the diagnosis and reached for an unproven treatment that carried real harms of its own, and my patient came to harm, I would have lost my license. Good intentions would not have saved me. I would have been expected to know better and to stop. So the other night, I listened to councillors ask thoughtful questions about affordability and taxes, congestion and the lack of transit upgrades, land speculation, absence of any real-world experience, the lack of a pilot program, the inconsistency of selection criteria, business and retail displacement, and more. And again, the clear answer simply were not there. Not because staff fell short, but because the evidence that this is the right solution simply is not there. As Councillor Kirby-Young put it, I'm not looking for signals, I'm looking for concrete answers. And when the answers to the serious questions do not exist, that is not reassurance. It's a plan whose consequences have not been worked out. So the problem is not permission, it's economics, and this plan won't fix it. That's why it's hard to see how this plan helps. While some of its harm is immediate and certain, it is fast, but speed is no virtue when the treatment is wrong. Get the diagnosis right and the policy right. The consequences will shape Vancouver's neighborhoods for generations.
Thanks very
Thank you.
much. That's your time. Thank you for coming in. Our next speaker is David Fine. David, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. It's much appreciated. I'm a Vancouver resident and I oppose this plan. You've heard some people tell you opponents are selfish people who do not want any change, but that's not me, and that's actually not anyone I know who's opposing this plan. Most of us want convenient, walkable communities with more amenities. We also want more densification options as alternatives to yet more towers and expensive micro units. We want more neighbors, and we know we have to grow this city, but I am speaking in opposition to this plan for the following reasons. Creating 17 new village areas all at once is a massive rezoning to over 13,000 properties, and most residents have little idea what is coming to their neighborhoods because outreach has been extremely limited. And no, the actual details of this plan were not part of the Vancouver ODP, the Vancouver plan or the ODP, so people have not known about this for years. I live in the McDonald and 16th area. I live there because I can walk to absolutely everything I need within a few minutes in any direction. A new development in the area advertises as walkable to Connaught Park, Arbutus SkyTrain, 2 grocers, 5 retail villages, and the Greenway. So I wonder how staff come to find that this is something we need when it already exists organically. I'm still in favor of more density options, but the rationale for creating a new village here is confused. On West 16th and Kitts, there are 2 new large 6-story developments going up. They will provide many new homes right across from Choices and other retail, but both large developments would not have been allowed under this plan because they don't have ground floor retail. In an area already well served by a popular grocery store, coffee shops, and restaurants. All those new units will provide homes and customers for the existing shops, but not under this plan because this plan forbids those buildings. Existing villages are under pressure, but are complete areas with shopping, libraries, and other amenities. Efforts should be directed towards strengthening them before providing competition with over 1 million square feet of additional retail space. The Vancouver BIA associations are opposed to this plan because of the detrimental impact it will have on their existing business areas. They spent 2 years working with the city on community plans, and that work has now been shelved in favor of this new plan, which makes all that time and effort wasted. You've already acknowledged the issues around the restrictions on homes in the core village areas, so I'll only say that it's unfortunate that Josh White dismisses this as only 4% of the total. Those are real homes owned by real people who would be trapped by this plan. Public feedback indicates support for increased density options, but residents overwhelmingly felt that buildings with such large massing as 6 stories at 3.7 FSR should be limited to the village core and provide a gradual transition in scale to other densification options. We need more missing middle, but I cannot find any record of any city on earth which allows 6 stories by right in residential areas. So why would we do this in a city which is already the 4th most dense in North America? Council recently sent back the multiplex housing policy for refinement so that developments would fit into the neighborhoods in a thoughtful and livable way. The same consideration should apply here. Residential property taxes could also be crippling. Of course, land values will go up when there's options to build up to 6 stories. Staff assurances that there will be little or no land lift is detached from reality. This will impact assessments. Staff have told us you can defer your tax if you're over 55, and if you've lived in your home for over 10 years, you can get a reduced assessment. But like my own neighbors, 2 doctors who moved in just a couple of years ago, they would not qualify for either a reduction or a deferment, so I wonder what they're supposed to do. Massive upzoning like this would be crippling to many people without a shovel going in the ground. So in summary, yes, the broad concept of creating walkable communities and providing more density options to build out low-density areas is welcome and supported, but this plan is fraught with issues and demands a rethink, with meaningful input from residents and the many experienced ex-city planners, academics, and even developers who have also shared deep concerns about this plan. Please listen to actual village area residents, not just activists who speak about other people's neighborhoods. Listen to the BIA associations who fear the consequences of a poorly thought out villages plan. Please vote no on this villages plan. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, David. Our next speaker is Tony Wilson. Tony?
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Tony Wilson. I'm a 75-year resident of Vancouver, and I would vote no for this plan. By now, you have heard many thoughtful presentations. I've read the reports, watched your discussion with planning staff, and listened carefully to many of the speakers before me. I'd like to leave you with one question. Can we build more housing without losing the qualities that make Vancouver worth living in? I believe we can. I support increasing Vancouver's housing supply. I support complete walkable communities where people can live close to shops, schools, parks, and transit. My concern is not the goal, it's the path that we seem to be taking to reach it. Last Tuesday evening, I watched your discussions with planning staff after their presentation of the village's plan. I was encouraged by the thoughtful and probing questions many of you asked, but I was also left with an unexpected concern. If councillors themselves, despite your diligence and much time, are limited in a complete understanding about a proposal of this size and complexity, how can the public have confidence that every consequence has been fully explored and understood before the final vote? Perhaps that tells us something, that this proposal deserves more time, more scrutiny, and broader public understanding before it permanently reshapes our city. Neighborhoods are not created by zoning maps. They evolve over decades through people, local businesses, schools, parks, mature trees, and a shared sense of community. That's why we should worry about this village's plan. It proposes a one-size-fits-all approach for 17 very different neighborhoods. It risks weakening long-established shopping streets by creating competing commercial areas when many existing businesses are already struggling. Wouldn't it make more sense to strengthen those neighborhood centers we already have by concentrating new housing around them instead of creating new retail nodes that compete with them? It also removes flexibility. Great cities grow incrementally with duplexes, multiplexes, townhouses, laneway homes, small apartment buildings, and sensitive infill that respond to local conditions. This plan largely prescribes one development model across many different communities. I'm equally concerned about something that often receives too little attention, our urban forest. The mature trees are not simply landscaping, they're essential infrastructure. Redevelopment on this scale will inevitably place enormous pressure on this tree canopy. Once that mature tree is lost, any replanting takes generations, not years, to replace the environmental benefits it provides. Housing and environmental stewardship should never be competing priorities. Good planning must protect both. My final concern is about governance. This proposal reflects a broader shift toward blanket pre-zoning, where many future developments proceed as of right, with little or no opportunity for further public input. Whatever the intent, the effect is to reduce the occasions when residents can meaningfully participate in shaping the communities in which they live. Public participation should never be an inconvenience to be designed around. It's one of the foundations of good planning and a functioning democracy. Cities are strongest when they are shaped with their residents, not simply for them. So before approving the plan, I respectfully ask you to measure it against a higher standard. Don't just ask, will it build more housing? Instead ask, will it build better neighborhoods? Will it strengthen the communities we already have? Will it support existing local businesses? Will it protect Vancouver's tree canopy? Will it preserve the public's meaningful voice in shaping our city's future? If the answer to any of these questions is uncertain, then this plan is not yet ready for approval. When a proposal is this large, this permanent, and this consequential, uncertainty should lead us toward caution, not speed. Years from now, people won't remember how many pages were in this report or how quickly it was approved. They will live with the neighborhoods this decision creates. The measure of this council will not be how many buildings it approves, it will be the quality of the neighborhoods it leaves behind. More housing Better neighborhoods. We need both. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for coming in, Tony. Okay, our next speaker is Eric Watt, and I have this person down as a representative speaker, but we haven't confirmed the additional 3 people that are representing. So I think, Eric, unless you are able to let us know, you will have 5 minutes to speak.
I'm fine with the 5 minutes.
Okay, go right ahead then. Thanks.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name's Eric Watt. I'm a longtime resident of Vancouver, speaking this afternoon about the serious concerns many residents share about how the village's plan is structured and what it means for our ability to shape our own neighborhoods going forward. To be clear, I'm not opposed to growth and I'm not opposed to housing, particularly affordable housing. Vancouver will continue to evolve and thoughtful planning matters, but growth must be transparent, balanced, and accountable to the people who already live here. On all 3 of those measures, the village's plan falls short. My first and most fundamental concern is that the plan uses blanket upzoning in a way that removes residents from meaningful input on future development. Once the land is broadly upzoned, most important decisions have been made, and the community loses leverage to raise serious concerns about building massing, traffic, tree canopy, privacy, shadowing, and neighborhood character. Residents may still be invited to comment later, but input becomes narrower, later, and less meaningful. That's not real consultation. That's the appearance of consultation. That creates frustration and erodes trust, an important element of our society. Residents deserve to feel that consultation is genuine, not symbolic. This is especially troubling because these are lived-in neighborhoods, not blank slates. People have built their lives here. They deserve to be at the table when decisions are made that will shape the communities for decades. The proposed plan raises the real question for Council: does public input matter? My second concern is infrastructure and services. Any plan of this scale must carefully account for transit, schools, parks and community centers, emergency services, and transportation. These aren't abstract issues. They affect daily life. Density added without the supports to match it affects both new and existing residents. We need binding commitments that services and amenities will grow alongside the plan, not arrive years after the fact, if they arrive at all. My third concern is parking. Residents and local businesses depend on accessible parking to function. As density increases under this plan, parking pressure will intensify significantly. Yet the plan provides no clear framework for how that will be managed. Removing or reducing parking requirements without a credible alternative creates real hardship for families, seniors, people with disability, and small business owners who can't simply be told to take transit and leave it at that. We need honest answers about how parking will be addressed before this plan moves forward. My fourth concern is retail viability. Neighborhood commercial areas work because of the delicate balance between foot traffic, parking access, affordable commercial rents, and a mix of local businesses that serve the surrounding community. Rapid upzoning and redevelopment can disrupt that existing balance severely. Construction phases also displace businesses that can't survive a 2 or 3 year interruption. Rising land values drive up commercial rents and push out independent retailers, cafes, and services that give existing neighborhoods their character. We risk ending up with ground floor retail that sits empty because the economics no longer work for local operators who are already challenged with online shopping and big box retailers. The vibrant village street life the plan promises will be an unlikely result. My fifth concern is property assessments and taxes, an issue that hasn't received nearly enough attention. When land is upzoned, property assessments rise to reflect the new development potential. For affected homeowners and small landlords, that means higher property tax bills based not on what their property is today, but on what a developer might someday build there. Many of these residents are long-term owners on fixed incomes who have no intention of selling. They shouldn't be taxed out of their homes because the city made a blanket change in the zoning around them. The plan has to address this directly with clear analysis and commitments around assessment impacts and provide meaningful protections for vulnerable property owners before upzoning takes effect. My sixth concern is neighborhood character and livability. Green space, sunlight, privacy, and sense of belonging are not sentimental extras. They're the qualities that make our neighborhood worth living in. If this plan moves too quickly or too aggressively, it risks destroying the very things that drew people here in the first place. In closing, I'm asking Council to take these concerns seriously. Reconsider the blanket upzoning approach and preserve real public input on future development. Require stronger infrastructure commitments, address parking, retail stability and viability, and the very real financial impacts on existing property owners, honestly and directly. And please don't treat what you hear at this hearing as a formality. These are the voices of people who will live with the consequences of this decision for a very long time.
Thanks, Eric.
Growth can happen, it should happen,
you're
but it must happen in a way that keeps...
Over your time. Thanks very much for calling in today. Okay, our next speaker is Agnes Lee. Welcome. You want to lower to the podium, or are you okay with that height? Is that okay?
I just don't want to break it, but that's happened before.
Here, right ahead.
You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Agnes Lee, and I am a Vancouver resident. I oppose the Vancouver Villages Plan, and I urge you to reject it in its current form. At the May Standing Committee meeting about multiplex policies, I spoke about the need for healthy growth of the city. As an aside, I do want to thank the Council for approving that motion to review those policies, and I look forward to participating in that review. Today, I want to talk about illness, the public health threat, otherwise known as the Vancouver Villages Plan. If this plan is approved, it could unleash malignant growth that could destroy our beloved city and our quality of life. Earlier speakers have already pointed out the many flaws of the plan, and the city staff have acknowledged some of them. The most troubling include the inadequate and disingenuous public consultation process, the absence of any requirements to build genuinely affordable housing, the lack of protection of our urban tree canopy, the complete disregard of the needed infrastructure planning, such as public transit, and the political spin given to the analyses about the financial feasibility, benefits, and potential harms to the residents of Vancouver. As Brian Palmquist wrote, the Villages Plan is a gross overreach of the city staff and government. But what is gross to me is how this plan will be like a cancer to our city. It will choke the organic growth of healthy neighborhoods that actually meets the needs and desires of the residents. It will consume resources and exhaust the infrastructure that are already severely strained. It will allow erosion of our property rights. It will devastate our increasingly vulnerable and much-needed tree canopy. It will disfigure the character of our unique neighborhoods, and it will extinguish the very essence of Vancouver that makes it one of the most livable cities on earth. Like a cancer, it will kill its host. I'm not the only one who thinks this. Experts like Brian Palmquist, Larry Beasley, Patrick Condon, and many others are warning us against this ill-conceived plan. We all agree that Vancouver needs to grow, but it must do so in a healthy, measured fashion. You've heard that people want to live on tree-lined streets and raise their families in a home with a yard. Yet, the Villages Plan is blanketly upzoning over 13,000 such properties and then allowing clear cutting of trees, and will turn quiet streets into parking lots. Furthermore, the plan does not offer affordability because there are zero requirements to build housing that the average household can pay based on their income. What gets built has been left entirely to the developers to decide, based on maximizing profit. We all know how that turns out. We don't need more empty condos, and the developers who built them don't deserve bailouts. Cancer is the great equalizer. No one escapes, no matter how rich or poor, but it will negatively impact our working families and those with lower incomes, much more so than those with financial means. I haven't always lived in this beautiful city. My family immigrated here when I was young. We experienced racism and other hardships, and we worked very hard to earn every dollar so that we could buy a house. So I am deeply offended by the malicious labeling of homeowners as the enemy of change and progress by some of the supporters of this plan who are fueling this debate with polarizing un-Canadian sentiments and who are indirectly profiting from pillaging our city. Bottom line, the Vancouver Villages Plan needs to die, or Vancouver will. Mayor and councillors, you have a clear choice. Vote to reject the plan. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Our next speaker is Linda Parsons. Linda, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. My name's Linda Parsons. I'm a longtime resident of Vancouver. My property is not affected by the village's planning proposal, but I strongly oppose it for several reasons. The proposal has a very worthwhile objective, namely increasing affordability and increasing livable housing in desirable neighborhoods in Vancouver. I'm all for this, and so are the people who've spoken in favor of the proposal. However, this rezoning proposal does not offer any reasonable guarantee of accomplishing this objective. The proposal offers no reliable assurances of affordability. There is no requirement for low-cost units. Instead, the proposal relies on market forces. We know how that turns out. There are no design guidelines to protect the livability of the new builds, not even setbacks, landscaping, or green spaces, despite the pretty and misleading drawings that accompany the proposal. There are no protections for infrastructure such as parking, utilities, deliveries, to name a few. And there will be significant tree canopy loss that cannot be replaced, even at great expenditure. There will be impacts on adjacent existing retail that have not been studied with any rigor. In fact, I'm astonished that there's really no economic feasibility study supporting this proposal. And there's no study to demonstrate how the increased density will impact the existing community infrastructure, such as schools, parks, community centers, emergency services, and transit. Also, there's no data to reconcile the existing vacancies already existing in our city, and there's no data to identify actual demand. But most significantly for me, there's no accountability for the destruction of the existing functional residential communities that are already true villages in reality, not just in a name. I'm extremely disturbed by the withdrawal of rights of homeowners who are affected directly by this proposal. They lose the right to renovate their homes or to densify by adding laneway houses or converting to duplexes. They sacrificed and worked hard to build their homes and their neighborhoods and now have become sterilized. And that is not only undemocratic and possibly illegal, it is a travesty. I, like many others, will not stand passively by and watch this disaster. I implore City Council to do the right thing and refuse this application and start over with something that intelligently addresses the responsible growth of our city. Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Okay, our next speaker is Pamela Fitzpatrick. Pamela, are you on the line?
Yes, hello.
Go
Yes,
ahead.
I am. My name is Pamela Fitzpatrick. I live in Vancouver and I oppose the village's plan proposal. Internationally recognized planning experts Brian Palmquist and Larry Beasley and their colleagues have shared with you their strong objections to the village's plan. I share their profound concerns and urge you to respect and consider their information. From my reading of their thorough and reasoned scrutiny and analysis, I can only conclude that the proposed village's plan is a straitjacket for our beloved Vancouver. In the earlier part of this public hearing, you also heard multiple presentations on the severe consequences of the village's plan from many, many citizens. So I will skip my similar outline and move on to other thoughts. Thinking beyond those impacts, we already have existing and distinctive neighborhoods across our city. Why not reinforce them? Diversify their housing options, including credibly affordable housing for both low-income and middle-income families. These neighborhoods have different needs and challenges for which imposition of a single zoning and building type ignores both. These neighborhoods are not broken. They need thoughtful community planning to reinforce and round them out. They don't need homogenization from crippling zoning requirements and undifferentiated buildings. Additionally, why the rush Current housing projections indicate we already have several decades' worth of zoning capacity for our housing needs, even with up-to-date population projections. We don't need additional capacity through rezoning, especially that which increases speculation, sets off land value increases or drops. And why the drop-down approach of the village's plan? Why not include public consultation and engagement in our neighborhoods to stimulate creativity so we get back on track to develop a Vancouver for the people? Additionally, this village's plan is so controversial, so untested, and such a major shock to Vancouver that it is unconscionable and irresponsible for 9 councillors to make such a monumental decision just prior to the fall election. Instead, make this an election issue and let the people decide. I urge you to abandon this current village's plan. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling in. Speaker 35 is Michael Geller, who's supposed to be on the phone, but there's a doppelganger in the chamber right here for you.
Sorry. I'm just waiting to find, I have a slide presentation which I sent to some of you and which I provide to the clerk, and I'm hoping you can load for me.
Okay.
I've been
Was there-
informed the
Do we have
deadline
a
was last Monday.
slides ready on that one?
Well, last month,
I know
all
that-
right?
Go right ahead, Michael. I think
Some
most
of
of
you
us have.
got it anyway, I
We
think.
have the.
Could I ask you
slides
to
in
pull
our
it up on
inbox.
your emails? Because I remember last time I was here, I rudely suggested some of you were reading your emails rather than listening to the presentation. Anyway, thank you. I'm here because, like many others, I do care about the city and I care about this proposal. The interesting thing is I have sat through so many public hearings at City Hall and heard so many people making absurd statements. I've often wondered how you can sit here with a straight face and deal with it. The irony is most of the comments I've been hearing about this proposal are actually quite sensible, and they make a lot of, they're right. I'm Speaker 35. I understand you will soon be hearing from Speaker 235. I'm actually going to make the rather outrageous suggestion that you seriously think about postponing this public hearing until after the election, and in the meantime, ask staff to do something they should have done, which is prepared time-lapse images and mapping to show you not how this might all look in 50 years, but how will it look over the next 30 years, year by year by year. Because that's the only way you'll fully appreciate why so many people, myself included, are concerned. I'd like to also start off by thanking Josh White and Neil for the time they spent meeting with me and also responding to my emails. But they're wrong. They're wrong on some factual things, and I believe, with due respect, they're wrong in terms of some of the ramifications. I've presented here the image of that beautiful drawing in the report that you've all seen. I think it looks terrific, you know, with the little buildings and the big buildings and the housing. It looks lovely. But what it doesn't tell you is what will it look like 4 years from now, 8 years from now, 12 years from now. Now, sadly, you're not going to be able to see the pictures I shared with you, but if you drive along Oak Street, if you drive along Canby Street, you drive along portions of Granville Street, you'll begin to appreciate what I'm worried about. And that is when you change zoning as being proposed here to reduce the value or effectively eliminate the value of improvements, when each property only has land value, there's no incentive for people to maintain their properties. And you can see it all over the city and in the pictures that I sent you, including a house. The other thing is, nowhere in the 329-page document, and I read every page, did it tell you that a letter would go out to 500 to 700 people telling them they couldn't develop anything on their properties in the intervening years. Now, you've heard this over and over again, and I've heard Josh and others say, don't worry, we're going to perhaps change that part. But my concern is that's not the only part of this plan that needs to be changed. My next slide was a delightful little development at 33rd and Mackenzie. Some of you would know it. It's a 3-story, 2-story townhouses above some retail and then a row of townhouses. The irony is this beautiful development could not be built under what's being proposed because you're essentially saying you want 4 to 6-story buildings up to 3.7 FSR. Now, with respect, most people listening to me have no appreciation what 3.7 FSR is. But after 55 years of developing buildings, I feel I do know. And trust me, it's an outrageously high FSR. But it was proposed by Coriolis because they took seriously your request to incorporate measures that would allow for some affordable housing. But it's wrong to be developing zoning bylaws and it basically form following finance. So I near the end. I better conclude here. The point is your own retail study shows there will not be demand for retail in many of these new villages. Meanwhile, some of these streets are dying. The images are incorrect because many of these village streets are half the width of the illustrations. If we go forward with this, all you will end up with is a lot of vacant properties, lots of for sale signs, but the reality is you will truly be destroying neighborhoods. Neil told me BC Assessment bases assessment not on zoning, but on house type. That is wrong. And it's not the only thing wrong with this application. I urge you to postpone the rest of this rather than listen to another 230 people telling you that something is terribly wrong here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Michael. And I think your presentation will be as part of the correspondence online as well. Thanks very much. Okay. Speaker 36 is Shell Johnson.
Plan. I am grateful for this opportunity. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Hello.
Yep.
Oh, I've been speaking. Hello. My name is Shell Johnson. I am a resident of Vancouver, and I oppose the village's plan. I am grateful for this opportunity to speak because if the village's plan goes ahead as council and the city planning department propose, I will not have a voice. There will be no community engagement in the process. This is removed in favor of the planning department working with developers who will define our neighborhoods and change forever the city we love. We live in a time of urgent climate warming. In June of this year, 2,000 people died in France and Spain due to heat-related causes. City planning experts in these countries have called for the planting of trees. Trees and their shade create a crucial solution to the climate crisis. It has been studied and proven that trees and their shade cool cities by as much as 18 degrees. And by this, I don't mean little spindly trees that will be planted after the fact. I mean mature tree canopies, which we already have. Yet here we are in Vancouver, clear-cutting lots in the name of density and supposed affordability, unproven by the report commissioned by the city and what council and the city planning department are pushing. The village's plan will create an urban heat island by clear-cutting trees and creating the blueprint for a concrete jungle without community input or engagement. We will be denied the benefits of urban greenery in favor of millions of tons of concrete poured. We need a planning department that takes into consideration the practical and essential need for trees and community engagement. The idea of density for density's sake, defined by developers rather than the communities of people who live here is wrong. We want smart density rather than a fait accompli where the planning department becomes oligarchs defining our city without community input. If the village's plan is passed, the legacy of ABC and Josh White's planning department will be creating a big, concrete American city, cookie cutter, rather than Vancouver, Canada. We, the people, are being used and hoodwinked for developers' gain. You have tried to silence us, full of sneaky. Call this pivotal, city-changing meeting for mid-July. I'm calling you today from the other side of Canada. I only received notice of it 10 days ago in the mail. I have read aspects of the Coriolis consulting report. There is no promise of affordable housing. Quite the contrary, considering market conditions and the glut of condos and rental units now on the market, far from it. The village's plan is out of step with reality of climate change. It is out of step with the people who live and shop and support small businesses in our neighborhoods. We need smart density. We need to protect our tree canopy. We need to protect our rights as citizens for community engagement. We need clear principles and strategic planning. For these reasons, I oppose the village's plan.
Thanks for calling in. Our next speaker is Russell Chong on the phone. Russell, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Hi, thanks for your time. Yeah, my name is Russell Cheong. I'm a lifelong Vancouverite, and I am speaking in opposition. I'll keep it short because I'm not sure how much I can say that hasn't already been shared by others already in opposition to this plan. I think like others, I was at first fooled by the name Villages Plan, thinking this could be a positive. But the fact is that villages, as truly conceived, are place-based communities that require place-based solutions, community-based planning that takes into account their specific needs, risks, and opportunities, not a top-down approach that lacks basis in economic, social, or geographic reality. My opposition here is based on the threats I see that it poses to the city that I grew up in and that I've grown to love, and including to its affordability, which we're already struggling with, the environment, and to its culture. I won't touch on character here because I know that isn't the most popular concept in this day and age, nor will I speak to the errors that suggest unfamiliarity with the city being planned for, if you can call it that. Now, simply mandating a height where affordability is theoretically possible does nothing for us. As we've seen in neighborhoods like Chinatown, densification doesn't always result in affordability. In fact, it can drive displacement. Now, here with the village's plan, where blanket upzoning is pre-approved without securing community benefits or setting clear affordability requirements, we'll see land lift that lines developers' pockets, and there's no way to provide assurances that their projects will actually work for the people. Some have stated that with this plan, we will face sprawl and a worsening housing crisis and an exodus of kids and families. I think that was one of the speakers last Tuesday. But I'll counter that and say that it simply isn't the case. The city has rarely, if ever, sent rezoning applications back to staff, let alone rejected them outright. But the level of place-specific consideration for spot rezoning does allow for development to add value to the city and help spread benefits amongst our fellow Vancouverites. By contrast, pre-zoning like this increases present land values, resulting in increased rents and lower affordability in the present, with no way of securing the hope for affordability in the future. This affordability will not simply appear out of the ether. Even more worrying is the way that city-initiated pre-zoning will apparently prohibit gradual densification prior to redevelopment as multi-use mid-rises. The land lift from pre-zoning already undermines affordability, and combined with freezing the state of these primarily single-family neighborhoods, clearly fails to increase the affordability of development and will result in a worsening of the housing crisis that means that owning a home is beyond a dream for me and many others in my generation. And that isn't even to mention the inadequacy of displacement safeguards. Now, another issue here is the loss of tree cover. Caveat of where possible means nothing when there are no enforceable requirements. One of my professors once shared with me the phrase that law is for the lawless. What this means is that rules are not there for people who would already follow them, but for those who won't. Developers are not driven by community benefit or by environmental protection or by other issues like livability or affordability or other aspects of the public interest. They're businesses first and foremost and driven by profit. Without rules that actually secure benefits for the public interest, this is a plan to sell out our neighborhoods, our ability, climate resilience, our livability for nothing in return. In the context of tree retention, the unintended or perhaps intended consequence is that the lack of law, lack of rules and requirements will result in lawless behavior, that is, development that does not retain trees. This is particularly worrying in the context of decreasing tree cover in our local region of Metro Vancouver and an increasingly warming climate. 5 years ago, we faced a heat dome, the likes of which our region had never experienced, in which community members died due to lack of access of cool places. Heat that was exacerbated by inequities in access to cooling technology and green infrastructure like urban tree cover. Just in recent weeks, we've seen intense heat waves that have struck across the world, breaking records and resulting in devastating wildfires and loss of life in urban settings. The cooling effect of mature trees in our city is undisputed, and failing to secure tree retention is a clear failure of the public interest on the part of those seeking to impose the village's plan on the city. Finally, I will also note that the plan threatens to undermine existing small retail in the city that's struggling. And we see this in cultural neighborhoods like Chinatown, Victoria Drive, Fraser Street, Punjabi Market, as well as other valuable neighborhoods like Hastings Sunrise and Kerrisdale, as well as on Dunbar. I don't really have much else to say, but I just want
Russell,
to say that please listen to others.
Thanks very much for calling in. That's your time.
And reject.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, our next speaker is Bryn Davison. Bryn, are you in the house? See him? Okay, we'll move on to speaker 39, Helen Hunt. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Helen Hunt, and I've lived in Vancouver all my life. I'm here to urge you to suspend the village's plan, please. It's a top-down repurposing of our city, which aims to control the form of development and of privately owned properties through massive upzonings of our cherished local commercial centers and character neighborhoods. You were elected to represent us, the property owners and residents who currently live in Vancouver. We've heard that 65,000 more people want to live here. Do you represent them as well as the constituents who elected you? During your 4-year tenure, you have eliminated so many of the previous zoning and development regulations, which evolved over 4 decades of neighborhood consultation and input. Your one-size-fits-all R11 zoning gives developers free rein to build their multiplex housing on any property anywhere in the city. There are 0 design guidelines, 0 affordability requirements, 0 tree preservation regulations, and 0 consideration for the quality of life for the neighbors. Surely the planners can do better. Have you driven around to observe the results of this free-for-all? Did you notice the incompatible size of the multiplexes, the site covering box design, the sun and view blockage, the absence of trees? I've heard one of our current councillors during a radio interview about multiplexes say he wouldn't want to live.
I just want to note that.
Excuse me?
I just wanted to note that we're speaking about the villages plan, and we've actually addressed the multiplexes in a previous.
Well, the villages though expands and continues the.
Okay, thanks very much. Carry on.
May I continue?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Homeowners and residents have made Vancouver's residential streets and neighborhoods famously beautiful. Density can be achieved without devastating the integrity of these existing neighborhoods and the people in them. The village's plan ordains and amplifies the R11 zoning regulations to include even more confining personal living conditions and dictatorial financial limitations. If anyone is anyone monitoring the successful sales and rental contracts supposedly achieved in these recently built accommodations? There are over 4,000 unoccupied condos in Vancouver. Do we need more? Vancouver is already the densest city in Canada. How much more density do we need? Do the right thing. End the village as planned. Take back control from your planning department. Place a 6-month moratorium on all multiplex and multi-unit development application, including in the villages, until a plan is created that will integrate appropriate density and compatible installations into Vancouver's existing neighborhoods. Show that you respect and value the contribution of Vancouver's residents. And thank you for representing us.
Thanks for coming in today. Our next speaker is Dallas Brody, number 40.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dallas Brody. I am opposed to this plan. I am the MLA for the riding of Vancouver-Colchena, in which 7 of these proposed so-called villages are either partially or completely contained. I am also a lifelong resident of Vancouver, and I live near McDonald and King Edward, where one of these so-called villages is planned. I am here at the behest of hundreds of my constituents who have expressed concerns about this village's plan. I have received texts, emails, phone calls, and am being approached on the street and in shops about this everywhere I go. I am hearing that a lot of my constituents don't like this plan. Many of them can't be here to speak, and they've asked me to stand in their stead, which is why I'm here, also for myself. It takes a lot to wake up sleepy Vancouver-Colchena, but this proposal has done that. To my mind, and to my constituents' minds, this plan is a brazen attack on private property rights and a continuation of the undeniable trend that we are seeing towards an ideologically driven administrative staff at City Hall, telling Vancouverites what they will do and how they will live, rather than how it is supposed to be, where major plans and changes to our city are brought about through very careful and thoughtful dialogue in consultation with each affected neighborhood. This ideologically driven reconfiguration of Vancouver is being seen in many forms, whether it is streets suddenly closed off in the middle of the night or turned into one-way streets by concrete barriers, the narrowing of major east, west, and north-south traffic arteries, the creation of ill-maintained plazas that sit vacant most of the year, the ubiquitous no consultation placement and ugly and ill-maintained bicycle stands, the installation of road-blocking plazas that we were told were temporarily only for COVID, the renaming of streets without the consent of property owners, and of course, the nonstop expansion of bike lanes, traffic bulges, and so on, that seems designed to make vehicular transportation as frustrating for the people of Vancouver who built this city as it can possibly be made. It bears commenting as well that from a procedural fairness perspective, bringing this matter to public hearing in the middle of July does not pass the smell test. Most people are focused on family right now. Their kids are out of school and they are absorbed with handling all of that and being at work and trying to plan getaways. They are not focused on the goings on at City Hall. Many of my constituents only heard of this plan a few weeks ago. This seems to be awfully short notice for such a massive change to our city. Should we not seek the greatest involvement possible in such a proposal as this? Staff can say that they have been consulting with Vancouverites, but that's not the experience of the people I'm speaking to, and it's certainly not my experience, and I tend to be pretty dialed in. I only first heard about this about 10 days ago. Constituents who have called me are in shock about all of this. Of particular concern are the over 750 homes that will go into what's called frozen status. Imagine that, frozen status for your private property. I never would have dreamed I'd hear that in this city. It sounds like expropriation, but I don't see the commensurate requirement for fair value. In any event, how is this possibly fair to those homeowners? Further, how can this plan possibly be justified in such a time as this? We already have a well-publicized oversupply of empty condos, 2,200 at last count, and an oversupply of rental housing now. So why in heaven's name are we considering adding yet more massive complexes to our city? We are scarcely able to absorb what is already built and coming on stream. Has city staff driven around the city lately and seen all the empty buildings and empty retail spaces? BC has seen, and also BC has seen a massive net outward migration of for the first time in its history over the past 2 years. Surely this should be taken into consideration when we're planning for future years. The trend is looking like more people are leaving BC for reasons I won't go into, but yes, it's not looking like they're coming here right now. This plan has all the hallmarks of social engineering and ideology over property rights, forcing lifestyle decisions on people who don't want it. We are seeing this more and more in our politics, where government forces its will on the people rather than being governing by the consent of the people. Even without this villages plan, I am getting calls from homeowners who are already very unhappy with the latest Wild West round of rezoning that's been allowing people to build multi-story buildings in the middle of a small bungalow street. And I get people in tears calling me saying that they now have a building that's gone up next to them on their bungalow that's taken all their shade or taken all their sun and all their privacy, and this was their plan for their retirement. See, I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to say, would it not be wiser to ask a neighborhood that likes this plan to step up and be the pilot project? Try one first. Why such a rush? This plan must be stopped at all cost. Why don't we just wait to see how the Oak Ridge Park Village goes before we proceed with a new one? I hope this council will reconsider this and put this plan away, come back to it at a later date. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks for coming in to speak. Thanks for coming in to speak. Our next speaker is Maria Kleiner.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I am opposed to this plan. My name is Maria Kleiner, and I've been a resident of Vancouver for almost 2 decades. And I oppose the plan because, well, it defies common sense. I will go over a few aspects of this. So the plan declares that it aims to fix a very important problem of home availability. The problem is that this is not exactly the problem that we currently have. We hear people say we need to build more housing, when in reality we've got an abundance of housing, and just recently a 3.2 billion bailout for developers has been announced by both federal and provincial government. So it clearly demonstrates that we have more houses than there is demand for. And I'm sure the villages plan was in the plans for a long time, and there are fancy images and videos, but smart planning requires taking new circumstances into account. And the new circumstances are: look outside and see all the new buildings with signs selling now and renting now, and we don't need any more of this. And this poor planning has already cost taxpayers a lot, and let's not make it worse. So next thing is that this plan is an outrageous disrespect towards the current property owners. This is an attack on private property rights, and it isn't new. We are seeing this trend on all levels of government these days. It's complete disregard of the rights of the hard-working taxpayers who worked and saved to build or buy these homes. And who would even want to own a home in this city if your ownership can be compromised at any time? And who would even want to work hard if you work hard to buy a home and then this home is not really yours? So this plan is the continued erosion of private property rights, basically one step prior to expropriation, where one technically on paper still owns their home, but the government bans them from fully exercising their ownership. Another disregard of reality that this plan doesn't address infrastructure needs, in particular schools. So parents have been struggling to get a school placement for their child for years now. And the Vancouver School Board ironically supported this plan, but here is a quote from their statement. The anticipated gradual change in villages will allow planning for future school enrollment. So the proposal is to add more density in the areas where there is not enough schools, but there is no articulated plan or even basic understanding how children will be educated in these new villages. Next, the effect on small businesses. And once again, this plan defies common sense. The local businesses are struggling already, and the proposal is to add more local businesses. And one doesn't need to be an economist to understand the concept of supply and demand. If there isn't enough demand for the current businesses, what will happen if we add more? One more flaw in this plan is that Vancouver is a relatively small city, but it is a very diverse one. We have very different neighborhoods and very different communities, each with their own character. And this is actually one of the rare cases where diversity is indeed a strength. So, however, this plan is a one-size-fits-all plan. It doesn't take into account the unique spirit of each neighborhood and proposes a neutral, anonymous design for 17 identical villages. So, we, the people who oppose this plan, heard accusations of, oh, you are just selfish and scared of change. But these are highly manipulative, empty words. Change can be good, but it can also be a bad change. And this proposed plan isn't just a bad change, it's disruptive and catastrophic. So I'm asking you to reject this plan. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, our next speaker is Thomas Perry on the phone. Thomas, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you bet. Go right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Tom Perry. I live in West Point Grey, where, as you know, our high street businesses are struggling. I thank you for the opportunity to oppose this village's plan, and I thank you also for your hard work as councillors. I'm impressed with the erudition of many presentations as well. I've lived in Vancouver for most of my 75 years, and I hope to live for another 75 here. I attended on July 14th to speak in person, but I was unable to attend today. As a former MLA for Vancouver, I was very interested to observe the discussion and the questions for city staff, which I thought contrasted favorably with my 7-year experience in the BC legislature. So let me give you a rare compliment. The last times I appeared before council in 1989 and the early 1990s, I was arguing for the preservation of low-cost rental housing, such as the former VGH nurses' residence and post-war low-rise apartments that were being demolished in Kerrisdale. Then Councillor Gordon Price and Mayor Gordon Campbell criticized me for failing to respect property rights. And my interventions and those of Darlene Marzari and Libby Davies and others were not successful. But I found it thus ironic that one of the main criticisms of the current villages plan is how it curtails property rights for many homeowners. For those of you who are old enough to remember, if any of you are, I could almost hear the late Premier W.A.C. Bennett inveighing against what he used to call the heavy hand of state socialism. I also wondered what Jane Jacobs, author of the seminal Death and Life of Great American Cities, would have thought of this plan proposed for your imminent approval. Housing Reset and so many others have pointed out that the actual plan almost seems calculated to harm existing residential and small business commercial communities. When Councillor Fry asked city staff on July 14th how the plan would maintain tree cover in Vancouver, I thought of the recent heat waves and the difference between neighborhoods denuded of foliage and some well-treed streets like 10th Avenue just to your east, or West 11th Avenue near me between Discovery and Trimble, just west of my home. Check out such blocks on a day like today, and you'll see why the trees are so important. The difference in temperature is very easily palpable when you walk from a non-treed block under the trees. Councillor Dominato's question last week, what is the city trying to achieve, struck me as important. I thought about it in context of how Vancouver has failed in recent years to maintain basic pre-existing infrastructure such as roads, sidewalks, and trees, let alone to maintain, improve, or expand other services like schools, parks, and swimming pools. And I'm a resident who seldom drives anywhere. I walk, cycle, and bus. I'm fortunate to have services near me. I'm in favor of more housing for people who live and work in Vancouver, but I cannot support the progressive destruction of livability and environmental quality that so many Vancouverites treasure. Thus, I urge you to put this plan aside. If it seems satisfactory to a new council after the coming election, at least that new council might have a mandate to approve such dramatic change, as long as the responsibility to live with it in the future. Last point, I don't think you need fear that Vancouver will miss out on federal housing dollars if you don't act on this plan immediately. We are well represented by Liberal MPs who need to be seen as advocates for Vancouver and Vancouverites and need our votes in the future. I thank you very much for considering my views, which are shared by my wife, who is also always a voter. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Perry. Okay, our next speaker is Florian Kuchenbauer. Florian, you there?
43 is not on the line.
Okay. Speaker 44 is Laura Pasut. Laura, are you here? Welcome.
Hi. Good afternoon, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Vancouver Villages Plan. My name is Laura Pasut, and I've lived on East 33rd Avenue, 2.5 blocks from Fraser Street in the Mountain View area for 23 years. I support increasing housing density in Vancouver. Our city needs more homes, and neighborhoods need to evolve, but I strongly oppose the Vancouver Village Plan in this form. I want to speak on two fronts. Firstly, I am extremely concerned about the restrictions imposed by C2D retail zoning for homes located in my neighborhood, what you call a village, and for others impacted with the same type of zoning. Secondly, why is retail on East 33rd and Fraser being proposed right now when the city's own report suggests retail development won't take place for years? So here's my first point. The city's May 2026 letter to homeowners under potential C2D retail zoning stated, quote, residential only forms will no longer be considered under this zoning, such as multiplexes, laneway houses, single detached houses, and others, unquote. This restriction is extremely punitive, considering developers have more than 13,000 properties to choose from throughout the city. Our C2D properties, therefore, may not be developed for years or decades. For families living on these C2D streets, this changes everything. Plans for a laneway house renovation, expansion, improvement for whatever reason, such as aging in place, space for young or adult children, generations living together, gone. Even maintenance changes. It no longer makes sense to maintain or invest in our homes. When the time comes to move, options are also limited. We must sell to someone willing to live in the house as is, or to a developer who may not show up for years. And with single detached homes no longer permitted, should our houses be destroyed by fire, we'll not be allowed to rebuild under C2D zoning. Homeowners who want to stay in their homes can't and will be forced to sell. Yet with more than, again, 13,000 redevelopment properties across the city, empty lots could remain empty for years before any developer or predatory speculator comes along. How does an empty lot with no development increase housing? Secondly, in my 33rd and Fraser neighborhood, there's another major concern. The city's own Retail Opportunities Report, dated April 2026 and found on the Shape Your City website, suggests that demand for retail on East 33rd and Fraser may not exist for years. Oh, just a sec. In section 3.3.1, the report states, quote, through discussions with city staff, there was an expressed desire to see retail frontage along 33rd Avenue running east towards Grays Park. We do not recommend retail along this portion of East 33rd, however, given that this would result in over-designation of retail capacity and may draw away from building out the retail node around the existing grocery anchor. The report also notes that on Fraser Street between 29th and 31st Avenues, which already has a No Frills and a Shoppers Drug Mart, there is an, quote, excess capacity to accommodate all of the projected demand, unquote. So now let me tell you how the retail need is already met in my neighborhood. I live in the middle of the proposed village and can walk to No Frills and Shoppers in 5 to 10 minutes, and 3 other large grocery stores, each 20 minutes away. There are 4 pharmacies, numerous coffee shops, restaurants, bakeries, nail salons, hairdressers, fitness facilities, and even healthcare providers that are easily reachable. We are already a village by your definition, and it's happening organically through your current policy. So my question is simple. If the city's own consultants conclude retail is not needed in this proposed Fraser and 33rd Village for years, why is City Council ignoring this conclusion? Why are homeowners being severely restricted today through this plan? If our consultants already recognize this, developers will too, and will not be in any hurry to lose money by building housing that requires commercial capacity that they know they won't be able to rent out for years. By rezoning massive tracts of land as C2D now, the city will be placing all of our properties in purgatory, with no likelihood of an investor being willing to make a bad investment and no opportunity for homeowners to add any housing capacity themselves in the form of laneways or expansions. This creates years, perhaps decades of uncertainty. Homeowners are discouraged from investing in their properties while waiting for redevelopment vision that may never materialize. Homeowners are handcuffs, rights taken away, property is devalued through restriction and not market forces. That is not how we build vibrant neighborhoods. I respectfully ask Council to reconsider C2D zoning for East 33rd Avenue and other villages and adopt a more flexible approach that allows residential redevelopment. That means voting no on the current proposal. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks for coming in. I moved into the same neighborhood also 23 years ago, so
Yeah.
attention. Nice to see you, Laura. Okay, very good. Next speaker is Sal Robinson.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sal Robinson. I live in Vancouver, and I'm here to ask you to reject the village's plan and to tell you something you probably don't know history-wise. One of the 17 villages so ill-conceived that its inclusion makes me mistrust any of this process brings me here today. Imagine a high street where you can find all you need just steps away from your home on Alamein Avenue. North on McDonald is a produce store, a service station, a dressmaker, an appliance store, a dry cleaner, a shoe repair, a bakery, a coffee shop, a beauty salon, and a couple more specialty shops. South is a pharmacy, a grocer, a barber shop, a hardware store, and another service station. A small medical building provides a physician and a dentist. No nail salon or cannabis outlet because this is 1955. And Alamein Avenue is a too short to be noticed, quiet residential street, just like it will be 70 years later. The difference is today it is ground zero of the proposed McDonald and King Edward Village. And that's pretty much its only claim to fame since 1948 when a baby made the news for not really being kidnapped from her playpen on a neighbor's lawn at 2875 Alamein. Though I guess 2706 has its place in history for being the house that Mr. and Mrs. Sim purchased before young Ken was born. Bigger houses have replaced most of the first ones on Alamein, but it remains a sleepy side street off a not very main road whose commerce has dwindled over the years. A new driver's license is hardly a daily need, and there is nowhere to pick up a liter of milk or a jar of peanut butter. But the milk and the peanut butter are only a 14-minute walk away at Choices Market on 16th. 6 minutes on a bike will get you to Dunbar Village or the Arbutus Shopping Center. Every part of the proposed McDonald and West King Edward Village north of Alamein is even closer to one of those established business areas. So by what criteria has this area been chosen for upzoning? Alamein Avenue ends at Trafalgar School. No density will be added on the school grounds or in the adjoining park. That's the equivalent of about 130 properties that can't be built on right across from the proposed Village High Street. 30 properties will be upzoned for 6-story buildings with retail and no other development choice. As for all the other blocks where apartment buildings are threatened, many speakers have listed the negative impacts they will endure where they live: clear-cut trees, lost privacy, overshadowing. And you've heard the same points raised over and over again through all the Broadway plan hearings and all the other plans and proposals and rezonings where residents write to you and stand here pleading that you take their concerns to heart under the delusion that they pay taxes to a government that should do something for them and not to them. Incumbent residents matter at least as much as aspirational residents. And to a couple of earlier speakers from the other night who may not have understood how their ageist attitude comes across, I'd like them to know that I am finished with neither my life nor my home, so they'll just have to wait. Maybe there are good places across the city for some of what's proposed. How can we know? Ask people who live here. Do the actual work of asking a lot of us, not virtually, but out in the world. Learn what neighborhoods need and want and will accept. Find out what might advance the housing goals left out of other plans. For example, if low-rise residential buildings shouldn't be limited to noisy arterial streets, how about making the roads less noisy and safer for all who use them by lowering and enforcing speed limits? Who loses if you encourage evolution instead of decreeing change? I don't live in any of the villages and have examined only one of the 17 life-altering plans. Even if the rest have more merit than this one, why impose everything everywhere all at once? Please vote no on the villages plan. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, our next speaker is Colleen Hardwick.
Hello. Good afternoon, Council. Can you hear me? Good. Okay. Well, my name is Colleen Hardwick. I'm a Vancouver resident, and I am here today to oppose the proposed villages plan. When I reviewed this plan, I started with first principles. What is being proposed exactly? Why now? What problem is this intended to solve? And what evidence supports a transformation of this scale? I believe public policy should be evidence-based. Without reliable evidence, the result is simple. GIGO most commonly stands for garbage in, garbage out, a fundamental computing concept, meaning flawed input data will always produce flawed output. So I looked at the fundamentals. What population growth projections justify this level of redevelopment? What industries and employment opportunities will attract future growth? How much growth are we planning for, and over what time frame? These are questions that I have asked city staff repeatedly. How much? How fast? Growth is inevitable, but good planning requires understanding the drivers of growth and ensuring that infrastructure, services, and communities can support it. Those answers have never been adequately provided. Instead, we are told they are aspirational. And my question is, aspirational for whom? Because the Villages Plan is not simply a housing plan, it is also part of a larger financial model. Following the 2008 financial crisis, Vancouver increasingly relied on growth-related revenues, including community amenity contributions or CACs, to help fund public amenities and capital projects. Over time, redevelopment became more than a planning tool, it became an important source of municipal revenue. And that then created an incentive structure where continued growth and rezoning became tied to the city's long-term financial expectations, driven by a pipeline of development and housing targets. But now that model is under pressure. The real estate market has slowed, projects are being delayed, affordability remains a challenge. Senior levels of government are even discussing interventions, of course, to bail out condo developers. So at this moment, the city is proposing a plan that dramatically expands redevelopment opportunities across Vancouver. So we have to ask, are we planning for the city that we need, or are we planning for a financial model that requires continued growth? Because if you build it, they will come is not a legitimate economic development strategy. The city is not a development machine. When growth becomes the objective, those that question the pace and scale of growth are treated as obstacles. Too often, that obstacle is the existing incumbent residents. But residents are not obstacles. Residents matter. And planning should begin with people and communities. It should reflect the needs of those who live here, not simply development targets or financial projections. This is about the future identity of Vancouver. 50 years ago, Habitat 76 established Vancouver as an international example of the livable city. 30 years ago, City Plan engaged more than 100,000 residents in shaping the future of their communities. That legacy was built on balance. Livability is not about adding just more housing units. It's about ensuring housing is supported by transportation, schools, parks, community centers, local businesses, employment opportunities, infrastructure, and affordability. It's about creating a city that works for the people who live here. So I ask, when did we lose the plot? I care deeply about Vancouver, not just for my generation, but for my children and grandchildren who will inherit this city. I urge Council to reject the village's plan, revisit the planning process, and restore a genuine partnership with residents. The city's financial strategy should support its planning objectives, not determine them. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Speaker 48 is Kathleen Larson.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Larson. I've been a resident of Vancouver since 1986 when I moved from Victoria to attend graduate school in the School of Community and Regional Planning at UBC. I then worked as a city and heritage planner for 26 years here in the Lower Mainland. I'm also a current council candidate with Team for a Livable Vancouver. Today I'll be speaking in strong opposition both as someone with an education and long professional background in planning and a team council candidate. I want to be fairly brief. I know there are a number of very esteemed and experienced city planning experts voicing opposition at this hearing, so I'm not going to try and repeat all of their specific and accurate comments, but I do want to stress this following. At the core of an education and planning is the importance of community and the need for full community consultation prior to the beginning of any planning process, where residents are actively involved and given varied opportunities to generate ideas, provide valued local knowledge, and frequent feedback, ideally resulting in a plan over which residents will feel a sense of ownership and will support. Typically, during the last number of years, the City of Vancouver has been presenting city planning projects and plans in final stages. The consultation is predictably weak, advertised open houses, or via Shape Your City online. Residents are expected to respond to plans that have essentially already been established at the direction of senior planner management. In response, I repeatedly hear people say, "I didn't hear about this," or "What's the point? Why waste my time?" They've already decided they're not going to listen anyways. The residents of Vancouver deserve better and have a democratic right to be fully involved in determining the direction of growth and development in their own city. This is beyond discussions regarding West Side versus East Side, Vancouver, density towers, evictions, hotels, or even views. This is much bigger and is about a complete lack of regard for all the residents, not incumbents, of Vancouver. There was very limited consultation for the village's plan. Residents within the village areas simply received a letter informing them of the proposal. Numerous people outside the areas, some just adjacent, are outraged at their lack of notification and involvement. I completely agree with them. Let me be clear. I do not believe the village's plan has been through an adequate planning and consultation process. Simply responding to those in opposition, "We heard your concerns, we're listening," etc., by sending the plan back to staff for review may appear politically advantageous just prior to an election, but is a waste of time for both staff and residents. Instead, I believe council members have a responsibility to require a full involved community planning process on behalf of all the residents of Vancouver that they were elected to represent. I will close with a quote from Jane Jacobs, who basically wrote the Bible on community planning. She said, "Cities have the capability of providing something for everyone, only because and only when they are created by everybody." Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next speaker on the phone is Speaker 49 is withdrawn. Speaker 50 is Elizabeth Marsh.
Speaker number 50 is not on the line.
Okay, Speaker 1 has 51 is withdrawn. Speaker 52 is Robert Heyman.
Yes, I'm here, but just 1 second. Well, you can hear the traffic on my street. That's okay. I had a slide presentation. Do you know if it's available or?
Yes, we are opening up right now, and just we'll just get you to tell us when to advance the slides. Go ahead.
Yep, I will. My name is Robert Heyman. I live in Vancouver. Lived here for 45 years. I actually wasn't going to return to speak today because what I'm saying is that mostly already been said, but decided that all opinions should be heard on such a city-changing topic. It's a generational change, and I first wanted to comment on the passion and preparedness of the majority of speakers thus far. Very impressive. I also wanted to thank the staff who prepared the plan. There is a place for planning, despite what some have said. Despite the many misgivings we've heard, I may have supported the plan if not for the freezing of the 700 or so properties, which I'm not part of, actually, but I'm amazed that that's happening. I looked high and low for this in the 300-page document, but I now understand that only those property owners were informed. The other thing I find surprising is that the supposed affordability does not address our city, what I think is our city's biggest issue, the sadness of the downtown east side. Slide 1, please. The reason I was not going to speak is that my points were well covered already. The sustainability of commercial areas of the village's plan, including the freezing of 700 or so homeowners' property, and while I believe that the goal of providing a variety of housing types is laudable, you've heard over and over again that it should be phased in and possibly graduated. Next slide, please. As a retired architect, I felt that there was merit to the village's plan. It is the implementation that I find at issue. As I prepared this talk, I received this invite on my doorstep. The depiction of villages in the invite differs significantly from reality. Next slide, please. When you look at any one village in context, you realize that it's not one village, but many. By the way, I couldn't change the slide presentation, even though I've tried to shorten my talk, so there's some pauses. When you look at any, next slide, please. So, as I said, when you look at any one village in context, you realize it's not one village, but many adding up to almost a city in itself. This is the village that many have talked about, centered at Mackenzie and 16th, and yet really it's one big village that goes all the way from basically Broadway all the way to 41st when you connect all the villages together. Next slide, please. Actually, you can go right beyond this one. The plan calls for village high streets with contiguous active storefronts. There are already a number of commercial areas around the city striving to maintain such storefronts. Unfortunately, we see continuous blocks, next slide please, continuous blocks of empty stores, even though the surrounding densities seem to approach the village definition. Next slide, please. Other areas such as Point Grey are similarly suffering. Once vibrant, many of the storefronts are empty and those that are occupied are not very active. I'd suggest that before we try to add more villages, we do everything possible to ensure that the existing areas can keep businesses active and prosperous. Next, I'd like to address 6-story buildings on all village streets. Next slide, please. I agree that we need more density, variety, and affordability in housing. Next. Although this is not actually a residential street, this is an example of that type of development. A closer look shows how the current single-family houses interact with this. Do we not want to gain the support of the residents of these areas in order to achieve success? Does it really make sense to have this interplay on every street within a village? Should we not strive to have some hierarchy from main streets that already have such development to those that don't? Next slide, please. Is a gradual height, maybe 4 stories, not more reasonable on such current single-family streets? Over time, as depicted here, which again is not a residential street, older 3- and 4-story buildings will provide a much more suitable transition to 6 or even 8-story neighbors than single family does today. Next, please. By placing townhouses, properly designed multiplexes, and apartment buildings appropriate in height. Yes.
I'm afraid you're at your time now. So thanks very much
Oh,
for
because
calling
we
in.
started late.
Thanks.
All
No
right.
worries. Okay, speaker 53 is Stephanie Vance.
First of all, my name is Stephanie Vance. I'm a Vancouver resident, and I'm opposed to the Villages Plan. First thing I'd like to say is thank you to councillors who are here in present at this meeting. It's very respectful to citizens when they show up that you are also here. I am opposed to the Villages Plan, but what I am not opposed to are the words villages, plan, or walkability. A very large majority of Vancouverites also wouldn't oppose those words. Villages can be lovely, planning is essential, walkability is convenient and healthy. But many citizens who know nothing about the Villages Plan think that the title means something lovely is planned. But instead, a cultural divide is happening in your citizenry between supporters and opponents of the plan. As an opponent of the plan, I want supporters to know that most opponents understand the need for increased density in the so-called villages area. But we want density that provides beautiful homes for newcomers. Both groups want buildings with interesting architecture, with green spaces, with easements, with trees, buildings that can enhance existing neighborhoods and increase density while preserving the character of neighborhoods. These are the kinds of buildings that new homeowners would be proud to call home, with schools, recreation facilities, transit, and green spaces planned to meet their needs. But 6-story rectangular buildings that fill up the entire lot with no front easements and with loss of trees, buildings that contain studio and 1-bedroom units and only a few larger units, are buildings that do not blend into our community and that many owners will have to leave once they begin to have families. Lovely human scale character buildings that we still find in some parts of Vancouver can enhance existing neighborhoods. So, how are you going to solve this problem when passions run so high on both sides and citizens are becoming divided? First of all, you must not mandate that some homeowners in pink zones are at the mercy of developers waiting to make them an offer. Supporters of the Villages Plan would not want that happening to them in the future when they own a home. This pink zoning could lead to expensive lawsuits that cost the city time and money and will cause more anguish to residents in those areas. It could leave derelict properties that have gone undeveloped and can't be improved, like we see on Cambie Street, opposite the new Oak Ridge development. You may have the legal right to do this, but do you have the moral right? There is a way to unite citizens, and it involves the bedrock foundation of good planning. Involve stakeholders early in the planning process. This was not done. Planners failed to meaningfully consult with citizens before the plan was crafted, and anger has arisen on all sides. Good planning, successful planning, must start with the needs, the values, the knowledge, the concerns of citizens, not developers or planners alone. Planners must first consult with citizens, then make drafts, then continue to consult, then revise plans, and keep doing this until planners and citizens have crafted a plan that both groups support. This is slow, hard work. It means that your planners have to start again, this time getting real community engagement, not merely a few citizens attending meetings after plans have already been crafted. Following this process, we can find solutions that will work for all concerned. Your planning department has a chance to once again make history. The Falls Creek neighborhood is known in planning circles for its unique and successful housing solution.
Thank you, Tiffany.
It was an
That's your time.
intensive, collaborative planning process that started with neighbors, future residents, and developers. It is regarded as
Thank
a
you
model for
coming
progressive
today.
planning.
Thanks a lot. Okay, Speaker 54 is
Finally, unite the citizenry. Don't
Speaker 54 is Jason Markham.
Hi. I live in the West 33rd and Mackenzie Street area. I strongly oppose the proposed Vancouver Village plan and the blanket rezoning of the existing residential properties. I have a young family and we chose to buy our home here because of the neighborhood itself. We're within walking distance to Kerrisdale Elementary School, Balaclava Park, local shops like Butter's Bakery, Bigsby's, and Mackenzie Heights Barbershop, to name only a few, of which make this community special. We know our neighbors, our children have friends nearby, and we have invested in building our lives here. This sense of community is exactly why we chose this neighborhood. My greatest concern is the financial impact this proposal could have on existing homeowners. If residential properties within the proposed village areas are rezoned in this way, many homeowners are worried that it could lead to significantly higher property taxes and carrying costs, not just a higher assessed value. The consequences for seniors, young families, and residents on fixed incomes could be devastating. Many of us spent years saving to buy our homes in these established neighborhoods. We should not be placed in a position where we can no longer afford to remain in our community because of a decision made by the city. During Council's discussion last week, a question was asked of the building planning staff about how rezoning would affect assessed value. The response was that if sales increase, assessed values may increase, and if sales decrease, assessed values may decrease. While that addresses assessed values, it does not fully address the concerns that many homeowners have on long-term property tax implications of blanket rezoning. Homeowners deserve a clear answer of how rezoning will affect the taxes they pay, both immediate and in the future. Before any blanket rezoning proceeds, the city should provide a detailed financial analysis explaining exactly how existing homeowners will be affected, rather than asking thousands of families to accept significant uncertainty. If you look at the R1 and C2E different mill rates and apply the City of Vancouver's published 2026 tax mill rate, R1 pays $3.36 per $1,000 of assessed value, whereas the C2E pays a tax mill rate of $12.47 per $1,000 of assessed value. Therefore, an existing R1 residential property assessed at $2 million pays about $6,720 in property taxes, whereas a C2E property assessed at $2 million pays $24,920 in property taxes. That is an $18,200 increase. How can anybody afford these types of increases? I'm not opposed to thoughtful growth, infill housing, or redevelopment. I support well-planned development where it makes sense. However, growth should be guided by careful planning that respects the existing communities and protects the people who already live there. Blanket rezoning is not the right approach. It creates uncertainty for homeowners, encourages land speculation, and may pressure residents to sell to developers simply because they can no longer afford to remain in their homes. That is not good planning. And it is not fair to the families who have spent years and decades building these neighborhoods. There's already thousands of vacant condominium units and commercial spaces throughout Vancouver. Redevelopment in many of these proposed villages may not occur for years or even decades. Existing homeowners should not be expected to bear the financial burden of holding the land for future redevelopment, while developers benefit from having land pre-zoned. I urge Council to reconsider the blanket rezoning approach. More than 14,000 homeowners deserve protection from unintended financial consequences and should not have their property rights fundamentally altered without a clear understanding of the impacts. The city can achieve its housing objectives while respecting established communities, protect homeowners from unintended financial consequences, and ensure that redevelopment occurs where there's general demand and necessary for infrastructure supporting it. In its current form, the village plan does not strike that balance. Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming in. Council, we've been at this meeting for about 2 hours straight. I'm going to suggest we take a 3-minute recess just for a little stretching of the legs, and then we'll come back in 3 minutes. Thanks very much. Okay, we have quorum again here, so we will continue with our speaker. Speaker number 55 is Lorna Shapiro.
Speaker number 55 is not on the line.
Okay, then our speaker 56 is withdrawn. Speaker 57 is Terry Clerk.
Hear me okay? Is this all right?
Go right ahead.
First of all, I just wanted to say in passing, as citizen clerk, that I wasn't a fan of FIFA, but I've become a great supporter of the beautiful game. And you did a great job out at Hastings Park. You know, that was just phenomenal. We went out there several times and loved it. Anyway, I'm just saying that before I say I reject this. No. I'm here, Terry Clark, and I'm the executive director of the Kerrisdale Business Association. The KBA board has reviewed in detail the plan and are opposed to it. The board represents over 300 small businesses in Kerrisdale, many struggling to keep their heads above water. They feel that by artificially creating shopping areas that will diminish their sales, especially when two of them are 4 and 7 blocks away, respectively. But we do believe that Kerrisdale's past development offers an exemplary example of how a village is created. It actually takes the local community, not the other way around. Looking back over a century before it was the 44 square mile metropolis it is today, there was Point Grey Municipality in the west, South Vancouver in the south, that coexisted with the then Vancouver. Point Grey had an over 30-year rung up on things like making it a priority to plant street trees, and citizens followed suit with doing the same on private property. The Point Grey City Hall was where Kerrisdale Community Center now stands, with a smattering of stores along Old Wilson Road, now 41st Avenue. The interurban came along around 1905 and changed everything. The venerable Sockeye Express ran from downtown Vancouver all the way to Steveston with a stop in Kerrisdale, and business flourished. Following the 1929 city amalgamation, the village grew in a kinder, gentler fashion with community input. Over the next 100 years, the growth included development of detached houses, condos, low-rises, and then high-rises that made Kerrisdale one of the first neighborhoods outside the downtown with a high density. This spanned Maple to the east, Larch to the west, 45th Avenue to the south, and West 38th to the north, all without a draconian, heavy-handed zoning measure confiscating the rights of citizens. Kerrisdale also came to boast a community center, rink, pool, library, anchors in the community. Our patrons bike, walk, bus, and drive to enjoy the amenities we offer. Part of the excitement of city living is taking many journeys to other neighborhoods, so it does not necessitate that a village be steps away from where one lives. Don't have my reading glasses with me. Based on the community uproar to a slap and dash kind of zoning, which gives them little say in their property's future, and the fact that this meeting is held slap dab in the middle of summer says a great deal about how planners plan. Kerrisdale evolved over time, and so will new areas, as has already been abundantly apparent in numerous current projects. Finally, a word about trees. One of the most beautifying actions a city can take is planting trees and protecting existing ones. Point Grey municipalities started this long before Vancouver. Trees have no voices of their own, especially the ones on private property once they've been bought by a developer. And I have witnessed their total annihilation too many times to count in my own neighborhood. No sapling can replace Kerrisdale Dunbar's magnificent woody sentinels. They are the lungs of Vancouver, and all the density plans should consider them first with care and consideration. To sum up, the Kerrisdale Business Association rejects the village plan in its present form, with the potential of diluting and competing with our present businesses while denying our community residents a say in their future zoning. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, next speaker is Thomas Lays, speaker 58.
Hi, my name is Tom Lees. I'm resident of Mountain View. Used to be Mountain View till they built a couple of 6-story buildings that we can't see the mountains through. But I'd like to thank the 30% of Senate councillors who chose not to show. And I'm wondering where the mayor is. I was hoping to address the mayor, but apparently for the second meeting in a row, he's AWOL. Anyway, there are two lies at the heart of this hearing. and this rezoning proposal. And it's a proposal, if it's a proposal at all, and not already a done deal. There have been no warnings. On my street, on Somerville, there's been no phase 1, no phase 2, no phase 3, 4, or 5. Nobody on the street received a notice of any of these phases, so there's no discussion on housing, on transportation, parking, play areas for children, parks provided. We don't know what's going on. I'm the only one on the street who's shown up, but everybody is concerned. And second lie is that according to the Vancouver Sun, June 30th, there are 4,376 vacant condos in Vancouver. On Thursday, a couple of young men argued that the village plan will give renters access to affordable apartments to rent. I'm wondering, what something are they smoking? This village plan was never going to be about offering supply for their demand. Do they think that there'll be something affordable for them? That's not what this is about. The need for apartments is really terrible, but 4,376 condos sitting empty today, available to them, but they're at prices beyond what people can afford. Why don't the price come down? Because the speculators who own them don't need to sell them. They have more money than they need. We need a city, a provincial, and a federal government that will subsidize housing to satisfy our need for housing, not the wealth of speculators, which is what the ABC Party is all about. It's a developer's gambit. The ABC Party is a lot like the Trump administration.
Thomas, I'm just going to ask you to speak to the merits of the application instead of casting any aspersions against any individuals.
But the...
Thomas, I'm chairing this meeting. I'd like you to stick to the topic, please.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. The point is that we're rearranging Vancouver into a series of ghettos and pushing citizen residents off the land, and that happens to be the responsibility of the party and the chair, I believe. The price of everything is set by supply and demand, with the old caveat that demand must be...
Chair, I do have a point of order. I really do want to hear from the speaker on their opinion on the topic and not on the various political parties. There are councillors in this chamber across party lines that have voted for or against a number of the different things you're referencing. So can we please leave the politics and stick to the specifics of this proposal?
Yeah. Thanks, I'd hate for someone to be upset about when I protest the fact that we are being how land is frozen and we're being chucked out.
Chair?
Yeah.
Can you please ask the speaker to stick?
Speaker, again, just a reminder to speak to the merits of the project of the plan itself.
All right. Well, I don't see a lot of merit in it. We're talking about a problem of a lack of housing for people who can't afford housing. And what's being proposed is more housing when there's housing that isn't being given to people who need housing. That's the problem. That's the lie involved in this. Does that address your concern? I hope so, because that's the issue here. The developers, we shouldn't think for a second that the developers who word saladed their way through meaningless softball questions last Thursday would care at all about building this if they weren't being able to make a lot of money. They'd walk away from the village proposal. They don't care if the apartments remain unlived in. They're glad about it. The key thing is what they can get out of it. All right. So there's no housing shortage. It's a shortage of money to buy the housing, a distribution of wealth shortage, the old problem Vancouver's always faced. What we're going to get is a whole bunch of federal and provincial subsidies to developers for more crappy, tiny dwellings built, cramped existence in an uglified city where current residents like me are forced to sell or live in a soulless village. But I have to confess that the city, I recognize, does have a problem. There's a financial problem, and I believe the problem is federal. The federal government a few years ago, and if you just give me a second on this, voted $90 billion for the biggest wartime production since World War II. And just last week, Carney announced another $100 billion to buy submarines. This means no transfer payments to the provinces, none to the cities, and the cities are only going to make money through user fees and increasing taxes for residents. So it's the city residents that are paying the city for the cost of the federal war budget. Just comes down to that. All right. This process is being manipulated. It's a fraud to say that Vancouver has a housing shortage. It's a fraud to say that all this development nightmare is villages and that this hearing is actually honest. It's a lie to say that the claim that the residents of this proposed village have been given 4 phases of consultation.
Sir, you're now at time. Thanks very much.
It says 3.
I realized there was a reset of the clock that sort of gave you a bit of extra time.
So I haven't used 3:20.
You have been over 5 minutes right now. Thanks very much for coming in. Appreciate
You're
it.
very welcome.
Okay. Speaker 61 is Isabel Grant, and we have to confirm whether you have 3 other.
Yes, they have confirmed that they have their cell phones at the ready, and the process of phoning for confirmation should have unfolded. And I also have a very short slide deck I wanted to confirm.
Yeah.
If that's available.
We haven't confirmed the 3 other speakers, but we're happy to run the presentation and we can get started, if that's okay.
Actually, there are 4 names that I have provided.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. So again, I'm Isabel Grant. I'm a resident of Vancouver, and I do oppose the plan. The thoughts I will share represent 3 generations of our extended family. Boomers, that's me, of course, millennials and their young children. And among us, we live in the River District, the Cambie and Mackenzie corridors. While I support the goal of densification throughout the city, I have deep concerns about many elements of this plan. It should be fully reworked, and shortly I'll offer suggestions about how this could be done. But first, how did this plan become so off the mark for 2026? In fairness, because in 2023, when work on the plan began, our population trends and economic factors were really different. Those involved would not have foreseen the sudden large reduction in immigration to Canada, the disappearance of condo and investment purchasers, our Canada-wide current economic instability, and the diminishing interest in low and high-rise living because of the extremely small floor space typically provided. Hence this huge inventory. Well, that's one of the reasons of unsold and unrented condos. And so the village's plan is simply the wrong plan for both today's context and that of the foreseeable future. And if it's to be viewed as a trial of concept, it's on far too large a scale to yield helpful results. The size of scale will actually slow and obscure the observable results, and in the meantime, irreversible damage will occur. And now, and this is where I need the next slide, please, to look more closely at some of the troubling issues. So slide 1, this is thanks to Google Maps satellite view, is simply our reference point, our own city from Point Grey to Boundary Road. The next slide, please. What's this? This is a satellite view of Paris, same scale. Why Paris? It's representative of the many European cities that had to increase density rapidly more than 100 years ago. How did they do it? By constructing vast areas of 5 to 7 story buildings. Note the large areas of grey. And what are their urgent actions now? They're in the process of planting 170,000 trees, all for the health of their citizens as they grapple with a permanent urban heat island and repeated heat crises. Next slide, please. This is Madrid, a similar result of their century-old densification. Vast areas of 5 to 7 story buildings with now urgent efforts to undo the harm done to the city. Their goal, to plant 1 tree every 7 meters. So we've just seen images of the best thinking and efforts at densification of some 100+ years ago. Those efforts have some unsettling similarities to the village's plan. But the problems that will occur with the village's plan are about much more than trees. Not long ago, Vancouver got close to exactly right a very major effort at densification, and that was Yaletown. In the 15 to 20 years following Expo 86, a true community of mixed incomes was designed and built. I happened to be the first principal at the elementary school that opened there in 2004. Almost every day, parents would speak to me about their delight in living in the neighborhood. Key factors were the generous outdoor space for gathering and interacting for all ages, plazas with inviting commercial space at ground level, high and low-rise buildings above, play areas for children, and key gathering spaces for all ages. Can we see the potential for anything like this in the Villages plan? Not 1 square meter. It's entirely residential with no provision for shared community space. We know that our society is grappling with problems of disconnection and loneliness. The silence in the elevators, whether you're in a 6-story or 40-story building. Vancouver's growth and densification must have provisions for community gathering, interacting, and playing. This is as important an element of infrastructure as are water mains and fire hydrants. It reflects the soul and values of the city and is entirely missing in this plan. And now, an observation specifically about the millennials I'm speaking for and their network of friends. They all grew up in Vancouver, now work in Vancouver, and as young adults, initially lived in low-rise and high-rise condos. When the first babies arrived, there was a mass exodus to the suburbs, and where they've been able to find, most commonly, small and barely affordable townhouses. The commute to work is wearing on them, but they're not going to come back to Vancouver, to the very small condos and 5 to 6-story buildings. And finally, what should come next for the Villages plan? A realistic and responsible approach for 2026 is to go back to the drawing board. Identify 2 to 4 sites in the city, possibly from among the 17 sites proposed or pre-existing neighborhood centers. Initiate a process of community-involved planning for a reduced in scale Villages Plan 2.
Thanks,
Include the
Isabel.
essentials. Don't concede to developers' demands to drop community amenities. It makes
let
sense
you,
to have some 4 to 6-story buildings, both on high-traffic streets as well as away from them. But when away from the main transit streets, they would ideally be clustered so that the community amenities funds can be pooled
Isabel,
to create.
I've let you go over your time on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So thanks very much.
Well, I will just add one final sentence then, because I do have 4 people who have confirmed that I'm speaking for them. So I will just finally say, it's time to send the plan back to the drawing board, rework it, and a key old Turkish proverb is, when you've been going down the wrong road, it's never too late to turn back.
Thanks very much. Okay. Speaker 62 is Michelle Spencer.
Number 62 is not on the line.
Okay. Speaker 63 is Raymer Grant. Raymer Grant.
I thought you were calling 62.
No, it's all good. Welcome.
Thanks very much. Mayor Sim and Council, my name's Raymer Grant. I'm a resident of Vancouver, and I must speak in opposition to the Villages plan. But first, councillors, thank you for the direct and clear questions you put to staff on July 14th. I do wish we'd heard some more similarly clear and direct answers. So public engagement or not, I claim no expertise in city planning. I did have a 35-year career in clinical and academic medicine at VGH. I know a little bit about surveys, sample sizes, interpretation of data, and the presentation of results. The Phase 2 Public Engagement Report acknowledges that the findings are not statistically representative of a broader population. But it's worse than that. The non-random and therefore meaningless sample was 0.3% of Vancouver's population and 2% of those living within the proposed villages. The results were massaged by combining respondents who liked an aspect of a survey with those who were neutral. But if we look at the raw numbers, which to be clear do not support definitive conclusions, in only 3 of 17 villages does respondents actually like the scope of what's being recommended. What is certain, the engagement report would have been completely different had the 600 owners on the proposed village high streets been contacted directly for their input. Instead, they received that now very well-known, unfortunate letter informing them that their only future option is to sell to a developer, concluding with the reassurance that no action is required from you as existing buildings can continue to exist. Imagine receiving such a letter. The city's legal representative suggested such a property freeze might be defensible, but one can only imagine the fallout from legal challenges. The referral report, information clarity or not. Within that report, there are 2 different maps for every village. The 2 versions of the McDonald and 16th Village, found on pages 28 and 66, show 20 fewer blocks of mid-rise development in the former than the latter, and 16 fewer properties on the high street, or maybe not. Not even the term a village is misleading. As we heard a few minutes ago, the 4 West Villages are in fact 25 continuous blocks from 16th to 41st. On finances, again, I'm no expert, but in a financial report, one might expect numbers, percentages, projections, rather than language that obscures the realities. The staff summary on page 17 of the referral report contains reassuring generalities. The report from Coriolis states, new housing development is financially challenging under the current market conditions. The Coriolis report is actually a 10-page summary that should have had its own executive summary. Here's my attempt. It focuses largely on assuring developers a minimum 15% profit margin. To that end, amenity charges and development levies are discounted, community amenity contributions are waived. Infrastructure costs are not tabulated. Power, water, waste management, transit, there are no numbers. The most viable scenarios for developers are based on 60-foot or larger lots, individually or as part of a land assembly. But there are no such lots on the east side, and only very few within the villages areas on the west. Upward pressure on land costs is repeatedly predicted unless below-market housing is made a requirement. On affordability, supporters of the Villages Plan are understandably disheartened by Vancouver's housing costs, but that's the reality well beyond Boundary Road. But it's not all bad news. We must remember the thousands of below-market housing units in the pipeline on the Broadway corridor, the Jericho lands, the Oak Ridge Heather, and Little Mountain areas, all facilitated by this council with some support from federal funding. Mayor Sim and councillors, in 2023, you began the laudable effort to streamline the development and the delivery of housing in Vancouver. To date, that initiative has been supported by all councillors. But the Villages Plan as presented to you only weeks ago cannot be what you had in mind. No proper public engagement, an opaque financial analysis. 14,000 lots upzoned all at once, pre-approved with design requirements yet to be determined, but written in stone by Bill 18. Commercial centers for which the need and even the legality is questionable. It's too big, too fast, too much irreversible momentum. If you're a movie buff, you'll remember this recent film, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It was perfectly described as an American-made absurdist comedy drama. I urge you unanimously reject this plan. Direct staff, through properly conducted public engagement, to start again. Consider developing 1 or more new such centers in an area where there is demonstrated need. Of course, I'm paraphrasing Larry Beasley. I make no apology. He did not receive the Order of Canada for being a second-rate urban designer. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, Speaker 64 is Nicholas Ray. Is Nicholas in the chamber? Yeah, I'm going to move on to Speaker 65, Daniel Teal.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Mayor and Council, my name is Daniel Thiel, and I'm here tonight to make my position clear that I strongly oppose the Villages Planning Program and the proposed rezoning changes. This plan represents a top-down approach that will dramatically reshape our neighborhoods without properly addressing the concerns of the residents who live here. Major decisions about the future of our communities should not be made without meaningful public consultation and a clean impacts. Residents are being told these changes are necessary, but many are asking important questions. Where is the infrastructure? Where are the plans for increased traffic, pressure on schools, overcrowded services? parks, utilities, and the impact on the character of our neighborhoods. You cannot approve massive changes first and try to solve the consequences later. Responsible planning means ensuring our communities have the roads, transit, schools, parks, and services they need before increasing density. Many residents are also concerned that this planning approach moves Vancouver towards a 15-minute city model without a clear public decision or mandate. Regardless of whether someone supports or opposes that vision, changes of this scale deserve transparency, open debate, and meaningful public consultation. The Village's planning program and these rezoning decisions risk putting a planning agenda ahead of voices of residents. A community is not simply a place to add more buildings, it is a place where people live, raise families, build businesses, and create a future. Council needs to step back, listen to residents, and reconsider this approach. Growth must be responsible, thoughtful, and planned with the long-term interests of the communities in mind. Mayor and Council, I urge you to reject this planning program and stop these rezoning changes. Put residents first, protect our neighborhoods, and remember that you were elected to represent the people who call this city home. On October 17th, vote Trubu Vancouver to put residents first. Thank you.
Yeah. Sir Kirby Young? No? Put your mic on?
No, I'm just noting that we're having political slogans from our speakers now.
Yeah. Slipped in at the end, obviously.
Thank you.
Discourage that from future speakers. Thanks very much. Okay. Speaker 66 is Tina Exarchulis.
Hello, can you hear me?
Let's go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Tina Exarchulis, and I was born in Vancouver, grew up in the Douglas Park neighborhood, and have lived in the city my entire life. I support thoughtful growth and recognize that Vancouver needs more housing. However, I oppose the proposed Villages plan. Not because I oppose housing, but because I believe this plan is incomplete and does not adequately address its impacts on existing neighborhoods or demonstrates that it will achieve its stated goals. My first concern is neighborhood livability. Many of the proposed village areas are established 1- and 2-story neighborhoods. This plan allows significantly taller buildings that will reduce privacy, increase shadowing, and accelerate the loss of mature trees. Growth should respect the character of existing communities rather than replace it wholesale. If protecting the environment is a priority, preserving mature tree canopy must be part of that conversation. Second, the plan reduces flexibility for existing homeowners. Properties designated for future mixed-use development may no longer be able to evolve to meet a family's changing needs. A homeowner who wants to add a laneway home or create space for aging parents or adult children may instead be forced towards a commercial redevelopment that makes little sense for their property. That is a significant change to property rights that deserves much more discussion. Third, this plan does not explain how infrastructure will keep pace with growth. What are the commitments for schools, parks, community centers, pools, sewers, transportation, and healthcare? Housing should not be planned in isolation. Density without matching infrastructure reduces quality of life for both existing and future residents. Other cities have learned this lesson. Toronto has added significant housing, yet residents continue to raise concerns about overcrowded schools, traffic congestion, park shortages, and infrastructure lagging behind growth. San Francisco also demonstrated that requiring commercial space does not automatically create thriving neighborhood businesses. In many cases, it resulted in vacant storefronts because market demand simply wasn't there. Finally, this plan assumes that more density will improve affordability, but Vancouver's own experience suggests the issue is far more complex. Oak Ridge Park added more than 3,000 homes, yet the vast majority are market-priced housing beyond the reach of many middle-income families. New supply is important, but new supply alone is not the same as affordable housing. Affordability is influenced by land values, construction costs, financing, development charges, and market demand, not zoning alone. Before expanding this approach across 17 villages, I believe Council owes residents clear answers. What evidence shows that mandatory commercial zoning will succeed in these locations? Will infrastructure be built before or after the new density arrives? What evidence from projects such as the Canby Corridor, Marpole, or Oak Ridge demonstrates that neighborhood densification has significantly improved affordability for middle-income Vancouver families? Most importantly, why should Council approve a plan that leaves so many of these fundamental questions unanswered? I support building more housing, but growth should strengthen neighborhoods, not diminish them. I ask Council not to approve this plan in its current form. Instead, revise it to better protect existing communities, preserve homeowner flexibility, ensure infrastructure keeps pace with growth, and clearly demonstrate how it will deliver housing that is truly affordable for Vancouver residents. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in. Okay. Our next speaker, 67, is Rebecca Fox.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm just going to change handsets. One moment, please. Hi. My name is Rebecca Fox. I'm a resident of Vancouver, and I live within the pre-zone area for Commercial Street and East 20th. And I'd like to say that it's been interesting listening to residents of Dunbar and Mackenzie Heights and East 33rd, because some of the issues are similar, but some of them are also quite different, which leads to my first statement, which is that Commercial Street has a unique character which you have not taken into consideration or credited. Number two, our neighborhood currently has diversified housing. We have rental and owned condo units, social housing, townhouses, multiplex dwelling, and single-family homes. On my street alone, on my one block, is an apartment house with 7 rental units, 1 duplex with 2 owners living there, 3 basement suites with owners living upstairs, 2 rental houses with 2 units each, 1 multifamily house, 1 art studio, and 4 single-family homes. The needed public infrastructure, such as school capacity, daycare availability, parking, and transit, do not sufficiently support the densification we have already experienced. And I'd like to say that's particularly true for school capacity. We have 2 elementary schools. They've had portables for years. If you add more, you're going to take away their playgrounds. Because of all the townhouses that have moved into the neighborhood, there are lots of young families. Maybe as these kids get old enough for school, their parents are going to have to drive them over to Dunbar, where one of the speakers said the schools were under-enrolled. Number 3, the businesses on Commercial Street have been slow to develop but are approaching viability with cafes, restaurants, allied health practitioners, child center activities, art gallery, craft store, bike shop, and offices. We are still lacking amenities that would improve walkability, but your homogenized plan with random and sweeping changes would not contribute to this evolution that has so far been based on local need and design. Number 4, your 14,000 parcel rezoning would strip public oversight, discourage local design, eliminate community participation, and ignore the fact that whatever displacement of people currently living in the neighborhood that would happen as a result of the village's plan would not lead to an increase in affordability. We all know that. Number 5, moreover, your rush midsummer to provide a free-for-all for developers without many current residents aware, at work or out of town on holiday, is a blatant misuse of what should preserve neighborhood identity and promote a democratic process. We urge you to reject this sweeping and ill-advised proposal. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Our next speaker is Philippe Canavera. Hi, and you have a presentation?
Yes. Just waiting for the slides.
Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Felipe Cañavera. I'm a registered professional planner with over 9 years of experience, specializing in urban planning policy, zoning bylaw reform, and the mechanics of housing delivery. I live here in Vancouver, and I am here to speak to the Villages Plan. To begin, I want to formally congratulate city staff on the technical rigor displayed in this document. Transitioning 17 unique areas towards a missing middle framework through area-wide city-initiated rezonings is a monumental step in streamlining our development pipeline and reducing the uncertainty that often plagues housing delivery in Vancouver. However, despite these procedural advancements, I must stand in opposition to the plan in its current form. My opposition is not to the proposed growth, but to one missing piece in the plan that can ensure that the growth includes deeply affordable no-market housing. That missing piece is the critical need for city-led land acquisition. As a planner, I recognize that while updated zoning is a necessary condition for housing delivery, it is completely insufficient on its own to ensure affordability. Currently, the village's plan relies almost entirely on the private market to meet its housing targets, effectively reducing the city to a passive regulator that simply hopes market mechanism will spontaneously generate no-market units. While the framework enables social housing and encourages the community sector, it fundamentally lacks the explicit policy language required for the city to become an active participant in the land market. The Vancouver Official Development Plan is built on the foundational principles of equity and resilience. If we leave the transformation of these 17 villages entirely to the private sector, we risk further land value speculation that may eventually price out the nonprofit partners we expect to deliver social housing. The plan currently outlines housing policies, but there is no directive for the city to acquire land proactively. Without a land acquisition intent, the city is a spectator rather than a partner in the redevelopment of these critical neighborhood hubs. Next slide. So to rectify this omission and align the village's plan with the city's broader social equity goals, I'm proposing a motion for council's consideration to direct staff to amend the village's plan to include one additional proactive housing policy. The motion is to amend section 3.1.1, village's housing policies, by inserting a new policy between policies 3.1.16 and 3.1.17, saying something like, the City of Vancouver will explore and bring to council land acquisition opportunities for the development of non-market housing and mixed market housing in the village's areas. Next slide, please. To reiterate my rationale, this amendment to the plan will help addressing market failures when purely market-led strategies are rarely delivering the very low to moderate income housing stock identified as a priority in the ODP. Proactive land acquisition will allow the city to reduce the land costs for nonprofit partners, enhancing affordability. This motion will help the city get strategic leverage. Again, by owning key sites within the 17 villages, the city can dictate the tenure, unit mix, and affordability levels of future developments, rather than negotiation from a position of reaction during the development process. And again, this will help build complete neighborhoods. A complete neighborhood must be inclusive. Direct city involvement through land acquisition ensures that social housing is just not enabled in theory, but delivered in practice alongside the new shops and services the plan envisions. Next slide. Again, to conclude, the village's plan is a sophisticated document that advances our urban structure. However, a plan that relies solely on the market is a plan that remains vulnerable to market failures. As a professional planner, I urge council to move from a position of mere enablement to also one of active participation. I ask that you do not approve this plan today unless it includes the language necessary for the city to pursue land acquisitions for non-market and mixed market housing. Let's ensure that these 17 villages are truly for everyone. Thank you for your time and for the opportunity to speak. That's all.
Thanks for coming in. Thank you. Okay, speaker 69 is Joan Bunn. Joan, are you there?
Not on the line.
Okay, very much. Speaker 70, Jeff Appleby. Not here? Okay. Speaker 71 is Interjeet Parmar.
'71 is not on the line.
Okay. Speaker 72, Amanda Boggin. Amanda, are you here?
Speaker number 72 is withdrawn.
Withdrawn, okay. Speaker 73, Michaela Smith. Let's see them. Speaker 74, David Orchard. Good, has a presentation.
Hello there.
One moment a sec, we'll just get the presentation set up.
Actually, don't set up my presentation, okay? I've got a better one.
We've got a better
You won't be able to see it, but I'll be able to speak to it.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, go right ahead.
So I'm David Orchard, born here, raised 2 kids here, longtime resident, looking after parents, etc. I want to talk about, no, I want people to look at me, not at the.
Show the deck.
I want to talk about a few things that have come up and then kind of take it at a path that you might not have heard as much. First thing is I want to talk about parking and who needs a car. There was a presentation earlier about like New York and Paris and London. Those are fantastic cities, but not where I want to raise my kids. We leaned into raising our kids. So we did the whole soccer parent thing, Cub Scouts, speed skating, going to Prince George for provincials, for volleyball, you name it. Almost every family we know that's got like 2 parents, 1 or 2 kids has got 2 vehicles. That's just, you know, I don't think people want to talk about that. But when I see a plan that says no parking requirements and it's kind of market decide, that ignores the lived experience of almost every parent across, you know, Vancouver West Side and East Side. So that's one thing. We need more parking. This plan is not really a plan. It looks to me like it's a protractor exercise. You pick a point, you draw a line, and there's nothing in it. There's no parking requirements, no green space, childcare, school capacity, community centers, transportation, phasing, pilot area, or affordable housing. And I took a look at the support presentations and see how people were talking about those that were opposed. Vocal minority of homeowners that want nothing more than youth to leave the city, want to gatekeep the city's future. Shame on them, greedy. Opposition comes from a small vocal minority. That's about 12 to 15% of the support. People were basically saying really negative things. I want to say that the reality is that we've been set up to fight each other. The people that are opposed and support, we're kind of fighting at each other, right? And it gets framed as like it's a homeowners thing versus the youth. Or for cars, vehicles, it's like, oh, you got to have cars or you can have active transport. But we're fighting each other, whereas the real issue is it's not like the homeowners aren't stopping progress. Like the homeowners are not blocking affordable housing. Every single one here has come in and said, we love it. I mean, I've been to Barcelona and I've been to Scandinavia and they've got fantastic low rise with the courtyard. It's fantastic. Who is blocking it? And how much do we have? If you take a look at I went through and took a look at all the numbers of all the lands that are being developed. You go through Jericho, Broadway, Canby Corridor, Senaqua, River, R11, UBC Westbrook, Northeast Falls Creek, Village, what's the River District? That's 180,000 planned or approved lots, right? Units. 180,000, that's amazing. So we've got that, and they're not coming online as fast as we want, so we have to do a whole bunch more, apparently. If you take a look at what's happened over the past history of Vancouver development from, like, say, the 80s, more than $1 trillion of wealth has been generated for various people. And it's interesting how the free market capitalists believe in price discovery on the way up, but they don't quite believe it on the way down when they're holding it. So let's take a look at who's holding it. If you take a look at the billionaires that we have here, Pattison, Aquilini, Beatty, Gallardi, Hui family, Bosa, Gillespie, Logi, they've all got lots of land. The developers have got tons of land. And what's happening is on the way down, the losses get socialized. We, the citizens, pay that cost. We've got the federal, this bailout at the federal provincial level, even like the Holborn land. That is so frustrating. Even the city here is cutting development cost levies, et cetera. So what's the history of delivering affordable housing? I'm arguing it's actually the billionaire developers that are holding up affordable housing, not people that live in the neighborhoods. So, for example, Concord Pacific, there was 1,250 units promised in 1990. 540 were delivered by 2023. And Holborn, they dozed that thing, 15 years ago with the low-income housing, 208, yeah. And then how many have been built now? 17 years later? None, right? Sorry, 54 units have been built. Like, so we're consistently having a thing where the people that have the property are not delivering when they can. They already have the zoning for it. They don't need any more. So, you know, the really thing is, like, we do this over and over. And the people who support, who sent their letters and spent the time, you're basically saying that the developers are going to do this, right? We give more to the developers and they're going to do it. We've been here before. We've seen history that they don't do it. This is like the thing that's attributed to Einstein. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. They've had the chance, they haven't. It's them, not the homeowners. Don't take from us. So please vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Okay, Speaker 74 is, 73? Oh, okay, so Speaker 73 is, one moment. All right, we'll go back to Speaker 73, McKella and Smith.
Hi, I'm actually just walking in the building. Can I just speak in front of council? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Why don't we'll just move on to the next one. Just come up to identify yourself. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Speaker 75, Kim Spencer Nairn. I don't see Kim in the chamber here. Okay, so we'll
75 is online.
Oh, on the line. Oh, okay. Kim, are you on the line?
I am on the line and I'm also 2 blocks away just walking as well. I'd love to speak in person if that's possible.
Okay. All right, we'll do that then. Speaker 76 is May Kui Lee.
Speaker 76 is not on the line.
Okay. Speaker 77, Jillian Rudge. I want to lower that podium there. It's down below there. Right ahead.
Sorry, can you restart me, please?
Yeah.
Want all my seconds if I can. Thanks very much. Thanks to the City Council members who are here today, and I trust that you'll share everything that we've talked about today and also last week with the mayor when you do see him next. My name's Jillian Rudge, and I'm a longtime Vancouver resident. I've lived in my home in Vancouver, the same one, for over 30 years, and I'm very much opposed to the village's planning program. When my neighbors and I learned about this hearing on July the 8th, we were all deeply troubled by the proposed changes that we saw there. As community members, we are not opposed to thoughtful housing development, like so many of the people who've stood before me, but we're generally concerned that the scale, placement, and density of the plan is going to fail to account for all kinds of things, including, as you've already heard, local and neighborhood infrastructure constraints, quality of life considerations, environmental impacts, congestion, accessibility in our streets and laneways. The rush to approve this plan is one of the strongest things I'd like to speak to. Before the upcoming election later this year, it feels disingenuous and it fails to respect the democratic principles that underpin good, sound, and reasonable governance. We trust you to do that for us. The timing of the hearing, when many residents are not currently in the city, the inadequacy of the information provided in early communications about the village's plan, and the choice by the mayor and council to deliver information cards about the July 14th hearing only 8 days prior to the meeting are incredibly disappointing, especially for a council that claims to have all of its residents' interests at heart. Our primary concern, as has been expressed by so many others, is the proposed bylaw amendment. This amendment is going to enable developers to begin construction without the opportunity for local public input. This means Vancouver residents no longer have an opportunity to express their concerns in development in both their immediate and surrounding neighborhoods. And at last week's hearing, it was the first time I'd learned this, we learned that owners of the residents in the proposed mixed-use areas would lose the right to improve or build in their own lots. That's de facto expropriation. I'd like to highlight just 3 of the many issues that have our concern. And the first is it's a one-size-fits-all approach. The blanket upzoning of the 17 different villages, as you've heard, across hundreds of blocks all at once fails to respect the unique architectural, historical, and infrastructure realities of individual neighborhoods like ours. If your priority is vibrant, livable communities, then a one-size-fits-all approach to town planning is a step backwards for Vancouver. An example of that difference that's been ignored is the variation in lot sizes, even within a small district like my own at near 33rd and Fraser. Some of the lot depths are 130 feet long, 40 meters, and others are only 96 feet long, 26 meters, 29 meters actually. Where you're proposing to put the mixed use is in the 96-foot lots. That's far too narrow to put in 4 to 6 story with retail on the bottom. Never mind setback and parking. We already embrace in our area, as others do, duplex, triple family homes with upstairs, downstairs, and laneways. We have secondary suites all down our street. All of those types of housing are great. I've lived there for 30 years and seen massive changes from single family homes to what we have now. And on my street, the 32 lots, 90% are double, triple, or quadruple housing. That's pretty progressive, I think. And the second point I was going to speak to was the loss of natural habitat, but people who are far more articulate than I on that topic have already spoken to it, except to say that I have a beautiful 120-year-old boxwood hedge and a mature red hazelnut that's home to all kinds of animals, birds, and insects. And it would be horrific to imagine those gone. Vancouver might have to rethink how it markets itself. Neighborhood impact is number 3. The main road where we are, 33rd, single lane of traffic in each direction, busy bus route. Intensifying density along that bus route without expanding the sidewalk widths, impossible, 96-foot lots. Utility infrastructure, it'll be a safety hazard for everyone on the roads, the vehicles, the bikes, and the scooters, and a pedestrian hazard for anybody who tries to use that route. In addition, the street's lined with many tall, mature trees. We have some amazing European hornbeams that wouldn't likely not survive the construction of 4 to 6 story buildings, especially if it's left up to developers to determine whether they should be removed. Parking, you've heard about. I'm skipping that because I need to conclude, and I've got 15 seconds. You might have to give me 10 more. We really would love for you to rethink this. The blanket upzoning is not okay. Repeatedly, you've heard from a number of parts of the city, but in particular, East 33rd, West 33rd, and Dunbar. And recently today, I've heard more about Mackenzie. These are places where we want sensitive, reflecting planning. Would you go to a one-size-fits-all shop for your clothing? Would you send your kids to a one-size-fits-all school? And would you go to seek medical?
Okay, just a reminder, we have a lot of speakers here, so I would like to ask our speakers to make sure that they abide the time limitation of 5 minutes maximum. 8 is Neil Pillar until I see either Michaela or Kim in the chamber. So we'll go with speaker 78 on the phone. Neil, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Go right ahead.
My name is Neil Pillar. I'm a 55-year Vancouver resident, and I am opposed to this application. I've studied urban geography at UBC. I've built and renovated a number of single-family, multifamily, and institutional projects, including being awarded a City of Vancouver Heritage Award. In the past, I have stood before council as a project proponent, but today I am compelled to speak up about what I see as a huge and irreversible mistake for the city. Over the past 50 years, prior planning staff and councils have managed to create something very special. We have learned that what freeways and suburban sprawl did to cities elsewhere, and Vancouver created something unique that became the envy of the world. We found a balance between a built environment and our natural surroundings that created a great place to live. As a parent of 2 20-something adults, I completely understand and support the need to provide a range of affordability options for various levels of income earners. Unfortunately, the proposed Villages Plan will not create the desired outcome. I have 4 concerns. First, livability. We all need a reasonable amount of square footage to raise our families in, access to fresh air, nature, and quiet, a sense of community. We have already seen the results of the recent multiplex changes when up to 6 units were squeezed onto a lot that once held a single-family home. The trees are all cut down, the units are tiny, and usually as expensive as the home that they replaced. And the neighbors are left living under the shadows of these monstrosities that cover almost the entire lot. Anything to do with design, aesthetics, tree canopies, ground permeability, sightlines, avoiding excessive shadows is gone. The mass of the proposed 6-story buildings is huge and should only be considered on major arterial routes. Most of the proposed villages should be limited to 4-story buildings on the main road and then step down to 2 to 3-story townhomes, row houses, and garden-oriented apartments. This would make the transition far more palatable for neighbors and create much more livable homes for the new residents. The density could be tripled or quadrupled without exceeding 4 stories. Secondly, affordability in housing is not as simple as supply and demand. This is a myth. Tearing down good housing stock that often offers affordable rentals to build more does not usually improve affordability unless there are subsidies or other intentional strategies or requirements in place. In an attempt to create so-called affordability, we have seen proliferation of new units that are so small that nobody wants to live in them and at prices that are still too high for most to afford to rent or buy. We need to continue to engage various levels of government, work with not-for-profits to create more co-ops and shared ownership structures, and incentivize developers to include non-market units. Just building more units that are smaller and smaller may mitigate price escalation, but it results in spaces that are not livable. There are thousands of unsold new housing units across the Lower Mainland that are unlivable and too expensive to buy or rent for many people. I don't believe for a minute that the Villages Plan in its current iteration will make housing less expensive. Third, the Villages Plan also includes the idea of adding retail commercial. Our existing neighborhoods already include businesses, and very few homes in Vancouver are not within a 15-minute walk of existing retail commercial areas. Adding hundreds of expensive commercial business spaces throughout residential areas is counter to good planning practices and will have a negative impact on existing businesses. Our businesses are struggling already. Even the city's own consultants recognize this. Rents and taxes are too high, and the retail landscape has changed with online shopping and big box retailers. You can see the empty storefronts throughout the city, and the vacancy rate on any given day does not tell the true story. Every month, new businesses open only to fail within 18 months. Retail in our city has become a revolving door of hope and failure. New retail space built at today's construction costs will be even more expensive to rent or buy, and taxes will also be higher. Our businesses owners need more customers, lower taxes and lower rent, not more competing business areas. When the retail experiment fails, we will be left with unused commercial shells and lots that nobody can afford to develop. It is these commercially zoned lots that homeowners will not even be allowed to renovate and will be forced to pay higher and best use taxes on. Lastly, on engagement and communication, most Vancouver residents still don't know anything about the Villages Plan and its massive impact. Creating a website, sending out a couple of postcards, and holding open houses in December and in the summer does not cut it. Putting out the actual plan only a couple of weeks before it goes to council is just not acceptable. I have spent 3 to 4 years working with the city and stakeholders to see a single property rezoned. Rezoning almost 14,000 properties in very diverse neighborhoods over 18 months with just one council session is crazy. I strongly encourage council to vote against the Villages Plan as presented and offer the following 6 suggestions. 1, make meaningful engagement with neighbors, residents a priority. 2, create clear livability and affordability requirements. 3, work with not-for-profit, various levels of government, and the private sector to create a range of home ownership and rental options that more people can afford. 4th, support existing retail commercial areas. Only consider new retail in areas where there is a proven need and density has already been increased, not just zoned.
Sorry, Neil, that's your time. Thanks for calling in, okay? Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Speaker 73, Michaela Smith is here at the podium.
Hello. Hi, I'm Michaela Smith. Thanks so much for listening to me speak. And I really, really hope that you all are going to take not only what I have to say to heart, but what so many residents have said as well. A little bit about me, although this isn't about me, but I've been in the corporate world for almost 35 years. I've opened offices around the world. I know business. I've been a homeowner. And more importantly, I've been a renter in Vancouver for longer than I've ever owned any property. We don't have the current or projected population growth nor business growth to support the housing that we already have. We have the Oak Ridge Center that hasn't even come online. We have market rate housing available left, right, and center that sits open. We have new commercial builds that sit open for years. This council has the developer community has successfully lobbied this council to be exempt for builders and developers to be exempt, not only from empty home taxes for rental and condo buildings, but now for multiplexes as well. If we have a housing crisis, why do we need these exemptions? You should know that using marketing terms like villages and affordability while literally destroying both not only is ironic, it's heartbreaking. I get that everyone in the council and working here is trying to make money. It's an expensive city, but I urge you all in this instance to think critically here. We have an affordability crisis. We do not have a housing crisis. What this plan does is make our affordability crisis worse. This plan is an attack on quiet residential neighborhoods across Vancouver that are currently thriving and walkable. They currently house density. They currently house multi-generational families. They currently house rental buildings. This plan is being rushed through to only benefit developers. And you risk not only being unelectable by community of voters across Vancouver, but you are also risk having possible legal implications, such that is being seen in Calgary by supporting a push through that plan that strips away rights from homeowners and does a massive land grab from residential homeowners to private equity. We have a crisis, and it's being driven by the constant thirst to find new revenue options for developers. You honestly believe that developer interests should drive our urban planning, especially you, Sean Orr? Where's the ask for co-ops? Where's the ask for social housing? This is a beautiful city. It doesn't have to be like this way. As someone who's lived in London, in Paris, San Francisco, New York, Vancouver is unique. I urge you to think about our unique needs. I urge you to think beyond this current council or in these current 5 years, think long term. If we had a housing crisis, why are we allowing affordable low-rise apartments and multi-suite detached houses to be destroyed for expensive density? Our local businesses cannot afford these new commercial spaces. Our local communities need to keep their affordable housing, which is often older. Older housing is not bad. As someone who grew up in a house that was built in 1908, who remodeled a house that was built in 1920, I can say without blinking an eye that remodel and upkeep costs keep costs down. There are beautiful apartment buildings between Fir and 10th that are currently slated to become towers. Those apartment buildings are huge, affordable apartments. I honestly, it feels, as someone who's spoken in front of you guys a few times, it feels like our words come on deaf ears. I love this city. I invest in this city. I am someone who makes decisions on what businesses come into this city based on the work I do. And I urge you all to think critically on this one. You have 200 plus people that are coming to speak to you, and they're speaking not because they're against helping renters find homes. And I think someone else mentioned this before. The oldest tool in the book is divide and conquer. And the narrative that I keep hearing is this is homeowners against renters. This is not homeowners against renters. This is developers against people that want to live and pay taxes and raise families and have children and grandchildren and invest in the city. I urge you all to think about this critically. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Speaker 75, Kim Spencer-Nairn.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Kim Spencer-Nairn, and I'm speaking in opposition to the Villages Plan. I've called Vancouver home since moving here at the age of 4 in 1979. I am a CPA, CA, and I've spent much of my career in executive leadership and board roles in Vancouver's arts and culture sector. My professional life has required me to evaluate business cases, make long-term decisions, and challenge assumptions. And that's what I want to talk about this afternoon, the assumptions underlying the Villages Plan. When assumptions are flawed, the outcome never matches the promise. Let's start with the most fundamental assumption behind the entire Villages model, that people want and need to live within a 5-minute walk of a commercial high street, Why 5 minutes? Why not 10 minutes? Why not 15? I've heard many speakers before me say that they already live within a 10 or 15-minute walk of an existing shopping street, and in some cases, several. I haven't heard anyone say what their neighborhood is really missing is another high street 5 minutes from their front door. So I have to ask, where did this 5 minutes come from? What research demonstrates that this is something that Vancouver residents actually need and want? This isn't a minor detail. The 5-minute premise is fundamental to the village's model. And if 5 minutes is an arbitrary number, then we are proposing to reshape entire neighborhoods around an assumption that hasn't been adequately demonstrated. The second assumption I want to question is that Vancouver needs significantly more small-scale retail. Really? Retail has changed and continues to change. Consumer habits have shifted dramatically. E-commerce has fundamentally changed how we shop, and many of Vancouver's existing shopping streets are struggling. So before we create more commercial high streets across the city, I think we should be asking whether the demand actually exists and will exist in the near future. In fact, the city's own retail projections rely on assumptions that current consumer behaviors will persist and that trends in online retail will remain static and that demand for convenience goods will not be affected by societal change or changing consumer preferences. Those are extraordinary assumptions to make when we are planning the future of this city for decades to come. The third assumption I question is that simply allowing greater density will produce affordable housing and more family housing. I don't believe the economics support that either. Developers don't build what planners hope for, they build what the market rewards. If the economics favor smaller units that maximize return per square foot, that is what will be built. More micro units that cost much more as older units that are twice the size. As for family housing, I did a Craigslist search this morning and found a well-maintained 4-bedroom home with a large backyard at Dunbar and 40th, currently available for $4,800 a month. By comparison, the single 4-bedroom home at Sanok Tower 1 is approximately 1,500 square feet, has no parking, and is asking $12,500 a month. This isn't a criticism of Sanok, it just illustrates a simple point. Density alone does not create affordability, and it does not automatically create family housing. Policy needs to require or incentivize affordable and family housing. Otherwise, the market will inevitably produce the product that generates the greatest return. Finally, I question the assumption that 6-story buildings on residential side streets are necessary to achieve meaningful density. There is a better model. I would welcome a 3-story apartment building or townhouse development in my neighborhood. An excellent example is the Formworks project at West 2nd and Cypress, where a heritage house was restored and converted into a duplex with 4 new 3-level family townhomes added as infill. It added meaningful density, it created family-sized homes, and it respected the scale and the character of the neighborhood. It allowed the community to evolve rather than be erased. I support more housing, but I support thoughtful density. This plan will reshape Vancouver for generations and not in a good way. I urge you to challenge the assumptions behind the plan that we want to live within 5 minutes of a high street. I don't think we do. That we need more high streets. Again, I don't think that's true. That density equals affordability and that height equals family housing. These are fundamental assumptions in this underlying plan, and they are critically flawed. I urge Council to reject this plan in its current form. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, Speaker 79 is Kelly Sawkins.
I'm here.
Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Kelly Sawkins. I live near 5th and Lakewood in what the plan calls the Nanaimo Street and East Broadway Village with my husband and our 2 daughters. I'm speaking today as a resident, and while I support the need for more housing, I oppose the report's recommendations as they are currently presented. I almost didn't sign up. I'm not someone who usually speaks at City Hall. But this proposal dramatically changes the block where we are raising our family and 17 villages of families and residents in the same position. So here I am. For the past 8 years, I've walked my daughters along Lakewood to Lower Secord Elementary. Lakewood is where they learn to ride their bikes. From our yard, we look up at an old, beautiful fir. It has stood there longer than any house on the block, and it will be here long after we are gone, if the block that holds it protects it. I want to be clear, I support more housing.
On my block, I welcome three-story homes, coach houses, and multiplexes, homes for 3 to 6 families where a single family once lived. Along Nanaimo and Broadway, I welcome continued shops and retail and 6-story apartments. And at the Chevron site, I welcome additional retail. What I cannot support is the plan as it is currently proposed. This plan enables 6-story apartments on residential streets like mine. It explicitly seeks to extend commercial uses off the arterials and into residential blocks. Its language on protecting mature trees is, where possible, 3 words that will not save a tree when a developer needs the footprint. And it removes the Grandview Woodland Transition Area, a thoughtful buffer between streets like mine and Broadway. I have 3 requests. First, in the Nanaimo and Broadway Village, concentrate density on the arterials themselves with gentle transitions into the residential blocks behind, not 4 to 6-story apartments on quiet streets. Second, put real mechanisms into the plan itself, meaningful setbacks, hard tree retention rules that don't hide behind where possible, and building standards that maintain the scale, rhythm, and character of each of these 17 villages. Third, more than 300 of us have signed up to speak at this hearing, one of the largest turnouts at a Vancouver public hearing. This represents real concern. I appreciate the work behind this plan, but that is not a reason to pass it as is. I'm asking you to take this feedback seriously, make meaningful adjustments, and act on what you are hearing. My request is not to stop growth. It is to grow thoughtfully and to preserve what makes Vancouver so special. Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Speaker 80 is Teresa Ramsey. Teresa is not here in the chamber. See? Okay. Speaker 81 is Catherine Kramer.
Hello?
Hi, Catherine, go right ahead.
Hello?
Hi, Catherine, can you hear us?
Hello?
Not. Catherine, are you there?
Hello? Hello?
Certainly not. So maybe we'll just move on to Speaker 82 for now. Jillian Lucina.
Hello?
Hi, Jillian.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I was speaking at the beginning and you couldn't hear me, and I can't tell if you can hear me. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to speak and for hearing my thoughts today. My name is Teresa Ramsey, and I'm speaking against the Villages Plan in its current form. I agree with the concept of villages, and I support the idea of walkable neighborhood centers and more housing types in our city that are accessible to a diverse population. I live in Grandview Woodlands, or the village area of East First Avenue and Nanaimo Street. My family feels lucky to call this area a village already. We can access a lot of what we need in terms of shopping. Our neighbors gather and look after one another. It is a connected, walkable community, and I feel fortunate to call it home. It has beautiful character, small businesses, mature trees, and is already undergoing significant density changes. This community also has some shortcomings. To support growth in this neighborhood, we need more accessible homes, renewed community infrastructure, and safer streets. The planned renewal of the Britannia Community Center has stalled, and traffic calming south of East First Avenue is long overdue to make walking and cycling safer for everyone. While I welcome more housing types in this area and throughout the city, I ask Council to consider 3 improvements to the plan. First, I encourage Council to reconsider a blanket pre-zoning. Residents should have meaningful opportunities to participate in shaping development proposals as they come forward. A conditional zoning approach could still support new housing while allowing projects to respond to the unique context of each neighborhood. Second, I ask Council to pay careful attention to the transitions in building scale. There should be a thoughtful progression between 6-story buildings and existing 2-story homes. Finally, housing growth should be matched by investment in infrastructure that makes neighborhoods livable. Community centers, parks, schools, transportation improvements, and other public amenities should grow alongside the population. While I support thoughtful growth, it must be accompanied by meaningful affordability, strong public infrastructure, and respect for the communities that already call these neighborhoods home. I ask Council to revisit the Village's plan to reflect those principles. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for calling in. Okay, now we'll try speaker 81. Catherine Kramer.
Hello?
Catherine, is
Yes,
that you?
hello.
Go right
Yes,
ahead.
can you hear me? Okay.
Go right
Hi. Hello. My name is Catherine Crema, and I'm a homeowner and resident in the Grandview Woodland neighborhood, where you're proposing not just one, but 2 villages. And under this plan, my house will be rezoned. I object to the City of Vancouver's villages plan for the following reasons. My neighborhood already has complete and thriving local shopping areas that we can walk to along Nanaimo Street, Broadway, Commercial Drive, and Hastings Street. There is already ample unused commercial zoning along Nanaimo, Broadway, Commercial Drive, and Hastings Street to facilitate the growth of 6-story apartments with retail at grade. Development should take advantage of this available zoning before embracing radical changes that would bring 6-story developments into residential neighborhoods. I find it odd that you want to preemptively upzone large areas of the city when it is typically at the rezoning negotiation that the city asks developers to provide amenities and improvements to neighborhoods in exchange for the rezoning. This plan appears to be another win for developers and another loss for residents. I am not opposed to duplexes, row houses, and townhouses that have a basement and 2 stories. I oppose all multiplexes and apartments within my neighborhood that are 3 stories and higher. Allowing higher buildings will negatively impact the sunlight and privacy for existing homes and gardens, which have taken time and care to cultivate and add to the character and livability of the neighborhood. The proposed out-of-scale 6-story buildings will reduce our already endangered green space and tree canopy. My neighborhood has narrow streets where only one car can pass at a time. Adding the proposed density within the neighborhood will mean more congestion in our side streets and increased potential for traffic accidents in streets that should be safe for children, families, and seniors. Significant increases in population density will place additional pressure on our well-used parks and crowded Britannia Community Centre and Templeton Pool. Yet, there has been talk that the city wants to close Templeton Pool, and who knows what is happening at Britannia Community Centre. The city has yet to deliver the improvements that are now becoming urgent for Britannia. Regardless of the village's plan, the development already in progress in my neighborhood, including the approved towers at Commercial Broadway Station, demands substantial improvements to our park, community centre, and pools, not reductions. Based on the latest social indicators and trends and community statistic reports available on the City of Vancouver's website for each of the city's 22 neighborhoods, Grandview Woodlands has the 8th highest population per hectare at 65 people per hectare, above the city average of 59 people per hectare. We have 33.6 dwellings per hectare. 70% of the dwellings in my neighborhood are already apartment buildings. In fact, low-rise apartments accounted for the majority of dwellings at 65%, more than double the citywide share of 31%. In contrast, Shaughnessy has the lowest population density of the 22 neighborhoods at 18 people per hectare. Yet, remarkable little change has been proposed for Shaughnessy. There are only 6.6 dwellings per hectare in Shaughnessy, but only 21% of the dwellings are apartment buildings. Both Grandview Woodland and Shaughnessy are the same size in area, each taking up 4% of the total area of Vancouver. Grandview Woodland houses 5% of the total population of Vancouver, while Shaughnessy only houses 1% of the population. And yet, Shaughnessy has 29.26 hectares of parkland, while Grandview Woodland only has 10.94 hectares of parkland. What is so valuable in Shaughnessy that it should be preserved? Why do they have more rights to wide streets with little traffic, underused parks, more trees and green space with fewer people to use community amenities? Since you say we have a housing crisis, then the time has come for change, and every neighborhood in the city has to play its part to alleviate the crisis. My neighborhood is already pulling its weight with respect to density. Please look to those neighborhoods that can better accommodate increased density. Lastly, why are you rolling out 17 villages all at once? Why not test one village to see if it works? One mistake is better than 17 mistakes. I suggest you test your village's plan in Shaughnessy. I urge you to reject the village's plan. I will be voting in October, but not for anyone who approves this plan. Thank you.
So Speaker 82 is in the chamber. Welcome.
Can I start? My name is Jillian Lucina. I'm a mom of 3 young children and a family doctor. Our family lives in the Mountain View area north of Fraser and 33rd, which includes 2 adjoining villages. We are strongly opposed to the village's plan, particularly for the Fraserhood area. We request that my neighbor, Mike Klassen, and the other city councillors pay attention to the serious concerns of our neighborhood and vote against the village's plan. I first found out about the proposed village boundaries affecting about 2/3 of my neighborhood 1 week before the public hearing. There has been 0 neighborhood consultation. I've since spoken to many neighbors who are outraged by the thought of our area turning into blocks of 4 to 6-story buildings. Our neighborhood is kind of a rarity in Vancouver in that it is already extremely full of young families with children who have real relationships with each other. Our schools are full and have wait lists. We can already walk to so many stores. This should be celebrated, not torn down. The Southwest Vancouver neighborhood where I grew up is now essentially devoid of children with lifeless sidewalks. My family previously lived in a small townhouse in Kitsilano, and we did not meet one single neighbor on our block full of apartment buildings, like those proposed by the village's plan, due to the lack of street-facing doors and yards. Contrary to this, in Mountain View, we know all our neighbors. We have more than 20 children on our block alone. Does City Hall not know or care that East Van is where so many young families in Vancouver already live, as it is more affordable than the West Side? There are many young professionals like me in their 30s and 40s with kids who live near Fraser Street. This city cannot afford to lose these young professional parents to the suburbs, such as family doctors, nurses, engineers, tech workers, and small business owners, who will then likewise relocate their employment. The families here will feel forced to leave their homes or risk being overshadowed by a tall condo building next door. My young kids are devastated and worried at the thought of their neighborhood friends being displaced. My 9-year-old said to me, "Mom, I don't want all my soccer team friends to move away. I'm so upset." Our Mountain View area already houses density in that most properties include rental suites, laneway houses, or multiple generations, often with 6 to 9 people on site. There are many tasteful 2 to 3-story townhouses and duplexes. I think it's naive and deceptive to state that for-profit developers will create missing middle affordable housing in this city. It is obvious that they will choose to build the tallest options with the most units at the highest market prices for rent or sale and pay cash in lieu. We will simply have more expensive or empty condos such as those being bailed out by government, leaving residential areas on the east side increasingly unlivable for the young families there. The economics simply don't make sense. Take the example of the new rental apartment on 33rd and Prince Albert near us. Their tiny 3-bedroom option is $3,600 a month for rent. At 850 square feet, this is a third the size of our house, with no yard, for a similar amount as a mortgage, without a suite or laneway to help out with the costs. Even a half-bedroom suite there is $2,000 a month. There are 0 requirements in this plan for developers to build any housing suitable or big enough for families, let alone affordable housing such as co-ops. A tiny 1 to 2 bedroom without green play space is not livable for families of 4 to 5 people or more. I'm appalled that one reason for the rushed approval and large scope of the village's plan is a $15 million one-time grant from the federal government. This amounts to about $20 per city resident. I implore City Council to vote against the village plan. Please do not destroy one of the few remaining areas in Vancouver that is really desirable and livable for young families. We will absolutely lose these families and the sense of community if this plan goes ahead. The city government should know that residents of Vancouver will speak via their votes at the upcoming election if their serious concerns about the village's plan are not listened to now. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Speaker 83 is Hugh Gusterson. Welcome.
Thank you for holding this hearing. I'm a homeowner in one of the 17 so-called villages of the Villages Plan. I grew up among actual villages in England and can say that what is proposed here bears no resemblance to an actual village. It's a laughable public relations term. I'm a professor at UBC who writes about processes of democratic consultation. And this one has, as you've heard, not been very adequate. I've never taken much interest in Vancouver politics before, but this plan has forced me off my couch. I strongly urge you to vote no. I love living in Vancouver. Let me tell you why. There's a strong sense of community in my neighborhood near 13th and McDonald, where incidentally, we maintain 2 community food banks for people who have a hard time affording groceries. I can walk in 10 minutes to my bank, 2 pharmacies, 4 grocery stores, a toy store, clothing stores, a furniture store, 2 pet food stores, a doctor's clinic, an acupuncture center, and multiple cafes and restaurants. I see the city's plan promises I will live in, quote, one of 17 vibrant, complete neighborhoods where people can live, shop, and connect within a short 5-minute walk. That nicely describes where I already live. The plan is to destroy my actual village in the service of a fantasy village planned in the name of residents, but actually for the benefit of developers. Vancouver City Council is going to destroy my village in order to save it. Here are 4 problems I see with this plan. 1, the proposed village I live in bears no relationship to the mental maps my neighbors and I carry in our heads. The proposed village excludes about 5 blocks extending to the local park, where we regularly walk and know people, but it includes 5 blocks on the far side of a busy road that we rarely cross. It's a village drawn from above by bureaucrats who know nothing about our lives. 2, my neighborhood currently has a diverse mix of renters and owners, but landlords will evict tenants, people like the family from the African Congo who live opposite me, so they can profit from rising land values by selling. 3, increased property taxes will price some of us out of our homes and force some of us to move. In an online discussion with a proponent of the city plan, he told me that would be a great outcome for me because I could make a profit by selling. What an impoverished view of life. What an impoverished view of life. I lose my network of caring friends and neighbors, but make a few bucks. 4, if 2 or 3 story freestanding homes on my street are replaced by 4 to 6 story apartment buildings, beautiful heritage trees will be cut down. The apartment buildings will aesthetically be at war with neighboring houses and will destroy the beauty of the street, as distinctive as the painted lady houses of the Haight-Ashbury or the Victorian brick houses of Beacon Hill in Boston. They make Vancouver, Vancouver. And the lack of parking spaces under the plan, while a boon to developers, will set off a parking arms race in the neighborhood. And it will obstruct the uptake of EVs, which are usually charged outside owners' homes. We need more housing. I'm not against more housing or affordable housing. We need especially the affordable housing that developers hate to build because there's so little profit in it. But this act of planning vandalism is not the way to go about it. Many of my neighbors hadn't heard of the 17 Villages Plan until 2 or 3 weeks ago. They understandably feel blindsided and are angry at the City Council. They're angry that under the pretense of creating vibrant, walkable locales, the city is imposing a one-size-fits-all plan through bureaucratic fiat. And why? There are 4,376 empty condos in Vancouver, in itself evidence of the dysfunction of our planning process. Maybe a solution to the housing crisis should start with those units rather than with the uglification and ruination of established neighborhoods. By my rough count, today, One person has testified in favor of the 17 villages plan, and 40 have been opposed. You, the councillors, were not in the overflow room last week, so you didn't hear, as I did, the cheers and applause for everyone who spoke against the plan. You've stirred up a hornet's nest and are in danger of being stung by it, while those supporting the plan have mainly spoke like planners in abstractions. Those opposed have done their research, but have also spoken movingly in the registers of anguish, anger, and indignation. I hope you will hear their voices.
Thanks for coming in to speak. All right, Speaker 84 is Danny Alexiuk. Danny here? Okay. So no Danny Alexiuk. Okay. Speaker 85 is Allison McFarland.
All right. Councilors, good afternoon. I appreciate that it's been a very long afternoon for you, and I'm sure you're tired, so I do appreciate your attention. My name's Allison McFarland. As a homeowner in one of the 17 so-called villages, I'd like to urge you to vote no on this plan. As director of UBC School of Public Policy and Global Affairs, as a former government official, and as an expert on public engagement in policy processes, I'd like to offer you a few important issues to consider. Number one, during this hearing, I heard vague promises of a semi-utopia of happy villagers in fulfilling environments. But this has been very short on evidence that backs up these claims. Moreover, though a main motivation for this massive change is affordable housing, this plan doesn't actually guarantee it. So what are we to make about this, except that this plan really isn't about affordable and accessible housing? Number two, voting for the village's plan will have severe negative impacts for existing community members. In your plan, you do not clearly discuss these impacts and offer clear and trustworthy mitigation. Number three, because the village's plan will severely impact affected areas, this kind of policy change requires an extended and detailed public discussion. You haven't held local village meetings where community members can come and ask questions, and get answers, and understand how this change will affect them. I'm sorry to say that such practice is simply public policy 101. It's what we teach our students. Number four, you have not yet demonstrated an urgent need to push through such a massive change so quickly. This is especially the case in light of the recent federal provincial announcement of a new affordable housing plan, which should have resulted in a pause in your planning while you integrate the impacts into policy. Number five, the alleged benefits of this policy change have not been demonstrated in your documentation. For instance, the plan notes that it will provide housing for the missing middle. In the 16th and McDonald Village, where I live, there are no less than 36 duplex, triplex, and quadruplex units under construction or recently constructed, as well as 2 5-story buildings that are also under construction. It was pretty easy to drive that this weekend, but I'm not convinced that your staff and your contractors have actually scoped any of these areas and collected any actual data. Moreover, the entire area designated, as you've already heard over and over today, in the 16th and McDonald Village is already walkable to shopping and amenities. And we're already a tight-knit community with neighbors that take care of each other. I really struggle to understand what problem you are solving here. Number 6, the negative impacts of this plan on existing communities need to be researched and clearly communicated to the residents. They include higher property taxes, perhaps overwhelming taxes for existing homeowners, including all of those missing middle people who've just bought in my neighborhood. They are not understanding the massive steam train that is coming down the tunnel to face them. And I heard your staff promise affordable housing to mitigate this issue, but there's no guarantee for affordable housing in the plan, so you have a contradiction.
You're at time, so thanks for coming in to speak today. Our next speaker is Speaker 86. That's Lance Garrett.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Just go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Let me begin by saying our lives were fairly normal up to about 8 or 9 days ago when we got the, I'll call it the postcard in our mailbox detailing the rezoning plans. We were shocked, saddened, and very upset at the time, and here we are 8, 9 days later feeling the same way. We felt no prior consultation whatsoever, and a lot of people calling in have felt the same way, that they were caught off guard. There was zero consultation, and why was this a shock to so many people? It should have been obvious these changes were coming, and it was not. I still remember that day 10 days ago or 9 days ago. I hope we overcome that jolt. So I have 3 issues I would like to discuss. One is the village concept. Let me just say that we are residents of Mackenzie Heights and 33rd Village area, and we are all of 2 minutes walk from that town center, Mackenzie Heights. We're further 10 minutes from Kerrisdale, 7 minutes from Dunbar, and 15 minutes from Kitsilano if we chose to go that far. No one I know asked for or wanted or needed a larger village, and we've heard this kind of comment continuously. Merchants in nearby centers are already suffering, for example, in Dunbar and Point Grey. I believe this village concept is flawed out of the gate. You can't dictate city hubs, and many of them, if not most of them, already exist. Here's another point, and I am very serious about this one. Why do 5%, my estimate, of people in Vancouver take the rezoning hit, this rezoning hit, while the other 95% have no impact on them whatsoever? This is unfair to the extreme. It could be even illegal. Maybe we should find out. And with this proposed changes to our neighborhood, one can only think this would increase dramatically the odds of having disruption in a lovely, quiet neighborhood which attracted us 21 years ago when we built our house, and we already have multiplexes to deal with just a few blocks away. Quite frankly, that's enough for now. Our next-door neighbors, particularly in teardowns, will be a developer's dream for vastly increased density side by side with existing newer homes. I worry that the mass of Vancouver buyers, not us, but the other 95%, will gravitate to the non-village zoning, which will not have high density. Why would they buy in my community with the restrictions and the zoning plans we have coming at us? They will buy outside of our neighborhood. Higher prices there, maybe. Lower prices here, maybe. So you can see my concern primarily for the unfairness of this plan, where we got 95% of the city looking over to these 17 villages saying, thank God that's not me. Well, good for them. Well, it is us. It is me. And we're concerned. And we don't like what's going on. And that's why we oppose this plan. We urge, councillors, we urge you to consider that 90% of the write-ins and comments are strongly against this plan, this recommendation, and of the phone calls I've heard on the 2 days I've been listening, easily 80 to 90% are also opposed. We hope you're listening. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for calling in. Okay, speaker 87 is Murray Margolis.
They haven't checked in, they're not online.
Okay. Speaker 88, Miles Steiniger. Miles, you have, you are a representative. Do we have your other three? 5 minutes is fine?
You can't coordinate across multiple days.
Very good, very good. Okay.
Marksman Miles Steiniger, I'm against the village's plan. Thank you to council and staff for your public service. I urge council to vote against this plan and revisit density in future on the basis of a different plan based around actual existing commercial centers. Many reasons for my remarks. One, or for my opposition. One, the number of speakers. If you have a hearing from this many people, the process has a problem. If you make a vote on the basis of a flawed process, you have a problem. Two, the sites do not reflect the reality on the ground. Did this council authorize staff to use the bingo dauber? Because the sites are arbitrary and imprecise. They do not keep with the goals of being near transit parks, schools, and other amenities. For example, in Mountain View, there's a site centered at 33rd and Fraser. It is incident on 2 super blocks bounded by arterials. They have no parks. You may say there's existing green space. There isn't. This council has allowed the cemetery manager to close entrances. You've heard about how Urban Systems does not recommend having commercial retail units on 33rd. I will just question why staff ignored that advice without comment in their report. Again, that site on 33rd and Fraser, it extends generally north from 33rd to an arbitrary stopping point at 28th. What's so special about protecting 27th? My neighbors were literally asking me that. Skipping to the east, there's a site, 33rd and Fraser. It's divided by a truck route. Is this a village? Now, the site at Commercial Street is divided by commercial diversion. You have a busy street on a corner, on a hill, with a building in the way and a SkyTrain alignment. I don't know how you're going to get flow through there. The desired path will be weird. I was pleased to see the call for increased greenways. Then I looked at the maps. There's literally one 30 East 31st Avenue as you approach Commercial Street, so just west of Victoria, that has an 8 to 10 foot right-of-way. It's pinned between 2 houses. Did staff actually visit the site before they put colors on the map? Scott Hine wrote an article, said stop calling these villages, and notes the sites are not based on existing BIAs. And so we're disconnected from the aims. Now on to a third point. If staff weren't motivated to create villages, what's the motivation? Well, clearly it's taxes. Dab. Pay up. You're a village. I can't build a 6-story unit on my 50 by 60 square foot lot. But I'll be taxed as if I will. Well, I'll be taxed eventually. Thank you for the 5-year averaging. 4, new builds are not a route to affordability. Anybody who tells you otherwise is playing their favorite game of regulatory capture. 5, we're 6 now. Mountain View, we received the postcard. It referenced R34 zoning. It doesn't presently exist, and it won't exist for the subject zoning that was being discussed. The definition is not found in the zoning bylaw, nor in the village's plan, and where you're going to vote on changes to section 3.111 of Schedule J of the zoning development bylaws, nobody can work out what R34 is from that, from those technical amendments. What it is a continuation of the original sin of property in Vancouver. And when the original Granville town site, sites to the west of Ontario were priced arbitrarily more than sites to the east. R34 is only for, it's basically R31, but on the west side, and the developer must make a community amenity contribution. So you're basically inoculating the west side from these developments. Is that fair? You're dumping this on there. So this plan disproportionately affects the east side. And I just have to say, communication on this issue is so bad, I wonder who council authorized to do this. Density is coming, but please do not vote for this plan in its present state. Thank you.
Thanks, Miles. Okay, Speaker 89 is Carmen Smith.
Speaker 89 is not on the line.
Okay, Speaker 90, Stephen McKickich.
Speaker 90 is not checked in.
Nope. Speaker 91, Michael Hicks. Fix that podium, guys.
For a way I can
Yeah, that's right.
lower
David,
this so I
we,
can see over the
move it?
top.
Can you lower the podium? Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you had a button. Just to your right, on your right hand, below there, there's a...
The down button. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. My name is Michael Hicks. My wife Jane and I live at 58th Avenue in Angus within the boundary of the 57th and Angus proposed village. We're opposed to the village plan for many of the reasons that have already been expressed, and we urge you to reject this plan entirely. My comments today are further to my written submission, which we filed earlier. There are significant affordable housing issues that must be addressed in this city. But this plan is a gross overreach and fundamentally flawed in a variety of ways. It is certainly excuse me. It is certainly flawed because it fails to balance the need to address the housing affordability issues in the city with the legitimate interests of those who live in these arbitrarily chosen areas, and to propose an approach that respects both interests. In failing to strike or even attempt to strike that balance, this plan is misguided and completely unfair. We have lived in this neighborhood for over 45 years. When we bought here in 1980, ours was a neighborhood of modest bungalows and family homes on modest city lots. Building regulations have changed over the years. Larger homes have been permitted on many lots. Suites and laneway homes have appeared. More recently, multiplex construction has been allowed. Although not every change has been enthusiastically received, the neighborhood has absorbed these changes and retained its essential character. It was a vibrant neighborhood when we moved in 1980, and it remains that way today. Sidewalks are busy, neighbors know each other, and support the businesses at 57th and the Boulevard. There are schools, parks, community centers, libraries, and other services nearby. Shopping districts in Kerrisdale and Marpole are well used. The bus service is accessible, and the Arbutus Greenway runs through the neighborhood. The church at 57th and Cypress is active and hosts a preschool. In our immediate block, a number of homes are rented to families and to students. This is a neighborhood that has evolved and thrived as change has occurred, and we are not in any way opposed to thoughtful initiatives to address housing affordability and needed density. Every neighborhood throughout the city must recognize and accept that change is needed in order to allow the city to prosper and new generations to gain a housing foothold here. But we say this change must be managed thoughtfully in a way that takes account of and respects the people who live here now. Whatever the village's plan hopes to achieve, it will turn a vibrant, livable neighborhood upside down. The plan is being imposed on a thriving existing community at the expense of the people who live there, its current residents. This is a neighborhood that contributes to the livability of the city as a whole. We have heard during this hearing from many residents from all of these other designated villages, and they speak in the same way about their neighborhoods. The village plan completely fails to account for the residents of those neighborhoods. Managed change that respects the scale and the pace of the neighborhood can work, but this plan is a gross overreach at the expense of those who live there. There is nothing in this report that gives me confidence that those who wrote it and are recommending its adoption have spent time in these areas and actually thought about the obvious impacts on the many residents and the existing vitality of these neighborhoods. Appendix K to the report is a detailed assessment from Corleos Consulting of the financial viability for developers of various development scenarios within these designated areas. The report does not include any similar appendix evaluating the very obvious negative impacts on the residents, and at no point anywhere in this report is there any assessment of the implications for the current residents or their existing communities. Their interests are simply ignored. There are a variety of concerns that have been expressed. Our concern, and my time is running out, our concern is a massive gift is being handed to developers and speculators at the expense of the people who live in these communities, who will see their property taxes impacted, their property values impacted, and their ability to negotiate a fair price if they are required to sell for any reason, seriously impacted. And they stand at a significant detriment in any kind of negotiation that they might have to have in order to sell their property. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Okay. All right, folks, we are going to have to recess the meeting. This meeting will be recessed until Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026 at 9:30 a.m. here in Council Chamber and electronically to continue with item number 1. And I'll remind Council that it is very important that you do not engage in any discussion or correspondence related to the application. So we'll resume this one again on Wednesday, July 22nd at 9:30 a.m. See you tomorrow morning.